North Carolina, a land of rolling hills, dense forests, and winding mountain roads. But hidden in the shadows of the Appalachian Mountains and the deep Piedmont lie villages that time forgot, swallowed by the forest, and haunted by the spirits of those who once called them home. These are places where houses stand in ruin. Cemeteries are overtaken by moss and roots, and ghostly figures wander among the trees. Locals speak of unexplained lights in the woods, echoes of laughter and screams at night, and apparitions that vanish when approached. Tonight, we uncover 25 of North Carolina's most haunted villages, where the veil between the living and the dead is thin, and the whispers of the past still linger among the trees. Walk carefully, because in these forests, every shadow could be watching. Every wind could carry a warning. Old Cranberry Hollow sits deep in the western mountains, its silence heavy and unsettling. Once a bustling logging village, the town thrived on the lumber trade in the late 1800s, with sawmills running day and night, and families filling the small cabins with life. Children played in the creek that wound through the valley, and merchants greeted travelers who came seeking work or passage through the rugged terrain. The town as growth seemed steady, its future secure, until fire of inexplicable origin swept through Cranberry Hollow one bitter autumn night. By morning, much of the village lay in ashes, and the survivors left, abandoning the town to the forest that slowly reclaimed it. Today, it is known as the Vanishing Village, a place where the boundaries between the living and the lingering past feel thin. Visitors to Cranberry Hollow often speak of the eerie quiet that greets them before anything else. The forest presses close, pine trees stretching high, their branches interlocking overhead to form dark corridors that twist along the overgrown paths. The air carries a strange, almost metallic scent, a mixture of scorched wood and damp earth. Hikers venturing to the hollow report the unsettling feeling of being watched, as if unseen eyes track every movement. Footsteps echo behind them, matching their pace, yet whenever they turn, there is no one there. Some swear the sound to those of the original townsfolk, still wandering the paths they once knew, caught forever in the rhythms of daily life they cannot leave. The remains of the village are scattered across the hollow. The cabins, though partially collapsed, retain the shapes of their former occupants. Charred beams jut from the ground, leaning at impossible angles, and fireplaces lie cold, blackened, a silent witness to the fire that drove the villagers away. Shadows move in these spaces, glimpses of figures just out of reach, slipping behind ruined walls or vanishing into the underbrush. At night, faint candle-like lights flicker within the skeletal cabins, though no power has graced the hollow for over a century. Some believe the lights are spirits attempting to rebuild their homes, or perhaps signaling each other across the darkness. Fragments of a life violently interrupted. Several hikers have reported strange interactions in the hollow. One story tells of a woman walking along a path bordered by wild raspberries and moss-covered stones. She paused when she noticed a figure ahead, a man in old-fashioned logging clothes. He seemed absorbed in examining the trees, yet he looked directly at her with hollow, unreadable eyes. When she blinked, he was gone, leaving behind only a faint imprint in the dirt, like a footprint pressed into wet clay. Another account comes from a group of campers who stayed near the creek. At midnight, they heard voices calling names in the wind, laughter spilling over the water, as if children were playing a game in the dark. The campers ventured out, but the hollow was empty, the only evidence of the activity the ripples in the creek, where the voices seemed to originate. The forest itself behaves strangely around Cranberry Hollow. Hikers describe paths that shift overnight, trails appearing where none existed, others disappearing entirely. Trees bend in unnatural ways, forming arches over hidden clearings, and some seem to whisper when the wind passes through. On foggy mornings, low clouds hug the ground, and a dull orange glow could be seen flickering among the trees. Those who approach find only an empty clearing, ashes scattered across the forest floor, though no fires burned there in decades. Locals claim these are echoes of the original blaze, replaying like a memory of the night the village disappeared, a reminder that the Hollow has not fully surrendered its secrets. Cranberry Hollow-esque haunting extends beyond visual or auditory phenomena. Some hikers report sudden chills, a weight pressing down on their shoulders, or a suffocating sense of urgency, as if they're intruding on something sacred. Electronics fail in the Hollow. Cameras die, flashlights flicker, and compasses spin aimlessly. It is as though the town itself refuses to be mapped, defying attempts to document its existence. Legends speak of those who have entered intending to leave only after a dire-esque hike, but instead found themselves wandering for hours, circling the same ruined cabins, following trails that lead nowhere. The Hollow does not follow ordinary rules, and it punishes those who disregard its boundaries. Researchers of the paranormal have investigated Cranberry Hollow for decades. Some claim the village is a hotspot for residual energy, the collective trauma of a community abruptly destroyed lingering in the very air. Others speculate it is a place caught between dimensions, a thin point where the past and present overlap. Cameras set up overnight capture blurred figures moving through the trees, lights rising and falling like tiny fireflies with no source. Audio equipment records faint whispers, conversations just beyond comprehension, sometimes accompanied by distant hammering or the creak of doors. None of these phenomena can be definitively explained, and each new report adds to the Hollow's reputation as one of the most mysterious abandoned villages in the region. Despite the danger, people continue to visit Cranberry Hollow. Some are drawn by curiosity, others by the thrill of encountering the unexplained. Hikers, photographers, and ghost hunters navigate the tangled forest paths, often leaving offerings or notes in hopes of peace or understanding. Yet the Hollow remains unpredictable, indifferent to human intentions. Those who stay too long often leave with stories of fleeting glimpses, whisper warnings, or the sensation of unseen hands brushing past them. Many describe it as a place where the past never lets go, where every step echoes a memory, and the air is thick with the presence of those who vanished long ago. Old Cranberry Hollow is more than a deserted logging village. It is a living memory of loss, mystery, and lingering spirits. The fire that destroyed it did not erase the people who lived there, nor did it silence the land they once called home. Today, shadowy figures wander between the ruins. Lights flicker among the trees, and the whispers of the past drift along the paths. Visitors are reminded that some places hold on to their stories, refusing to vanish entirely, and that in Cranberry Hollow, the past is never truly gone. The Hollow waits silently for the next visitor, its secrets hidden in the shadows, ready to be seen, heard, and felt by anyone daring enough to step inside. It is a place where time folds back on itself, where echoes of a vanished village still wander among the trees, and where every footstep carries the weight of history, memory, and the unexplained. The vanishing village lives on, a ghostly testament to lives interrupted, and a mystery that refuses to fade. Whispering Pines lies deep in the northern highlands, a place where the forest has swallowed the past, leaving only the faint outline of a once thriving farming village. Decades ago, the town was known for its fertile fields and tight-knit community. Families worked side by side, tending orchards, plowing rows of wheat, and harvesting corn under the golden sun. Children ran barefoot through meadows, their laughter carrying across the valley, while the smell of fresh bread and smoke from hearth fires lingered in the air. But one autumn, without warning or explanation, the villagers vanished. Homes were left unlocked, meals sat uneaten on tables, and livestock wandered untended. Today, the village is nearly unrecognizable. Trees tower over once open fields, their roots splitting the cracked foundations of farmhouses. Barns lean precariously, doors swinging in the wind or remaining stuck, frozen mid-motion. Fences, once orderly, are tangled with ivy and brambles, and the main road is little more than a narrow, overgrown path. Yet, despite the decay, visitors feel an uncanny presence. Hikers and explorers often describe the sensation of being followed, a subtle shift in the air that makes the hair on their arms rise. At night, when the moon casts pale light over the hollowed homes. Whispers drift through the trees, almost conversational, though no one can be seen. Sometimes urgent, sometimes teasing, as if the forest itself remembers those who disappeared. Many who wander through whispering pines report seeing lights moving between the trees. These lights appear without warning, small orbs that float just above the ground, bobbing as though searching for some thinga or someone. Some are bright enough to illuminate the path, revealing glimpses of long-abandoned structures, while others are faint, barely distinguishable from the mist that settles over the fields at dawn. Witnesses claim the lights sometimes follow them, turning aside only when they stop or change direction. Folk tales suggest they are the spirits of the missing villagers. The barns are particularly active. Visitors have reported hearing the squeak of hinges, the clatter of tools falling to the floor, and the sound of horses pacing within empty stalls. On foggy evenings, some say they have glimpsed shadowy figures of children darting between hay bales, laughing in the night air. One family of campers recounted a strange experience near a collapsed barn. As they tried to light a fire, they heard the unmistakable giggles of a child, soft and playful. When they turned, a small figure peeked out from behind a tree, its face obscured by shadows. Before anyone could react, leaving behind only the echo of laughter and the scent of autumn leaves, Whispering Pines is not only haunted by visual or auditory phenomena, but also by the sensation of being pulled into its history. Hikers describe a strange disorientation, where familiar paths twist or vanish entirely. Maps become unreliable, compasses spin, and time seems to stretch or contract unpredictably. Some report waking in the morning to find they have returned to the same spot they left the night before, despite hours of walking. The forest does not seem bound by ordinary rules, and those who wander too far often feel the subtle weight of unseen eyes watching, following, guiding, or warning them. Local legends speak of the night the villagers disappeared. Some claim a sudden unnatural fog rolled through the valley, dense and cold, swallowing houses and people alike. Others tell of a strange humming that filled the air, vibrating through the ground and making animals restless. No definitive records exist. The only evidence is the emptiness left behind, the abandoned homes, and the whispers that linger long after night falls. Paranormal researchers have tried to document the activity for years. Cameras capture fleeting shadows darting through trees. Audio equipment picks up whispers that rise and fall with no discernible source. Thermographic images show sudden bursts of heat in empty rooms, while infrared recordings reveal fleeting human shapes gliding silently across the fields. Each investigation confirms the presence of something beyond the ordinary, though its origin remains a mystery. Despite warnings and tales, Whispering Pines continues to attract adventurers. Some come seeking evidence, others driven by a sense of fascination, a desire to witness the unexplained firsthand. Many leave with stories of fleeting glimpses, whispered warnings, or the unnerving sensation of a presence that is both invisible and undeniable. Campers and hikers alike speak of the feeling of being watched, or the distant sound of footsteps following them along the overgrown trails. Some even claim to have found old toys or trinkets, perfectly preserved among the ruins, as if the children who vanished left them behind intentionally, tokens of a world that once was. Whispering Pines is a place where the past never fully lets go, where the energy of lives abruptly halted lingers in the very air. The leaning barns, the towering trees, all are infused with memory, echoing the lives that once filled the valley. Each whispered word in the wind, each flickering light between the trees, serves as a reminder that this place has not been abandoned entirely. The village-as essence remains, a ghostly testament to a community lost without explanation, and a warning to those who enter that the forest remembers. Visitors who tread carefully through the overgrown paths often leave with more questions than answers. They feel the tug of the unseen, hear the faint voices of children playing, and glimpse the lights of villagers tending invisible fields. Whispering Pines is more than an abandoned farming village. It is a living echo of the lost, a place where the past seeps into the present, and where every rustle of leaves, every creaking barn door, and every whisper in the night tells a story that refuses to fade. It waits silently for those who dare enter, ready to share its secrets with anyone who is willing to listen and perhaps to become part of its echoes. Briarwood sits in a narrow valley, cradled by thick, dark woods that block sunlight for much of the day. The village is small, its streets winding tightly between centuries-old cottages, many of them weathered and worn, their roofs sagging under the weight of countless winters. Horses clattered over cobblestone streets. Children played in the village square, and smoke from hearth fires spiraled into the crisp mountain air. Once, Briarwood was a thriving settlement, known for its timber trade and skilled blacksmiths. But something changed long ago. A series of unexplained disappearances and strange occurrences gradually emptied the village, leaving it abandoned for decades. Now, Briarwood is a place where the air feels unnaturally cold, and the shadows themselves seem alive. Visitors entering Briarwood immediately notice the chill. The temperature drops sharply even in summer, a biting cold that seeps into clothing and bone. Paranormal investigators describe the air as oppressive, as if the valley itself is breathing a silent warning. Hikers and explorers report seeing shadowy figures out the corner of their eyesa. Quick glances reveal nothing, yet the feeling of being watched remains. Sometimes the figures are human-shaped, fleeting silhouettes that vanish when approached. Other times they are darker, undefined shapes that seem to melt into walls, trees, or fog. Those who stay too long speak of persistent unease, a weight pressing down on their chest, and a whispering wind that carries voices they cannot quite understand. The streets of Briarwood tell their own story. Doors swing open and shut without reason, often with a loud bang that echoes through the empty alleys. Windows rattle in old frames, though no wind passes through, and furniture inside the abandoned houses shifts subtly, as if recently used. One visitor recounted standing before a small cottage when the door slowly creaked open on its own, revealing a dark interior filled with a faint scent of smoke and something sweet, like baked bread. Yet inside, the place was empty. Another spoke of a chair moving across a floor, as if pushed by an invisible hand, leaving scuff marks on the worn wooden planks. The phenomenon of ghostly horses is one of Briarwood's most widely reported mysteries. Several accounts describe horses crossing the deserted streets, their hooves striking echoes against the cobblestones. They appear fully formed, yet often semi-transparent, fading in and out like mist. Witnesses describe harnesses rattling, the sound of hooves and wheels creaking as if a carriage once followed behind, though no carriage is ever seen. These sightings usually occur at dusk or in the dead of night, when the village is cloaked in darkness, and the only light comes from a pale moon filtering through the dense canopy above. Locals who live near the valley's edge claim the horses are spirits from the village's past, a reminder of the lives and routines that once filled Briarwood. The forest around Briarwood adds another layer of unease. Trees grow tall and close, their branches forming a nearly impenetrable wall. Paths disappear into dense undergrowth, and fog frequently settles low, swirling through the valley in ghostly tendrils. Travelers speak of hearing footsteps in the woods that mirror their own, or catching glimpses of figures moving between the trees. Sometimes, the shadows seem to reach toward the village, following intruders, or retreating just out of sight, as if observing from a hidden distance. At night, the wind carries faint sounds of laughter, whispers, the clinking of tools, or the distant ringing of a bell. No one lives in Briarwood to produce these sounds, yet they persist, repeating like echoes of a life long gone. Many who explore Briarwood describe sudden disorientation. Paths twist unexpectedly, familiar landmarks vanish, and time feels distorted. Hikers sometimes awaken in the morning at the same spot they camped the night before, even if they remember walking for hours. Compasses spin erratically, electronics fail, and cameras capture blurred figures or streaks of light that cannot be explained. Infrared cameras show faint human shapes moving through empty rooms. The village seems determined to remain elusive, its boundaries fluid, and those who enter often leave with more questions than answers. Paranormal investigators have documented the strange occurrences for years. Cameras capture blurred figures or streaks of light that cannot be explained. Audio recorders pick up whispers in languages unknown, or children singing softly in abandoned streets. Even temperature sensors fluctuate without cause, plunging to freezing levels in areas exposed to sunlight. Despite warnings, Briarwood continues to attract the curious. Ghost hunters, explorers, and thrill-seekers wander the narrow streets and dense woods, hoping to catch a glimpse of the unexplained. Some leave with photographs of shadowy forms or glowing lights hovering near cottages. Others come away shaken, reporting feelings of being followed, unseen hands brushing past them, or hearing their names called in the dead of night. Every visitor experiences a village differently, yet all agree on one thing. The cold is never ordinary, and the presence of something unseen is undeniable. Briarwood is more than an abandoned village. It is a place frozen in time, where the remnants of daily life are intertwined with the supernatural. The cold winds, the shadowy figures, the ghostly horses, and the whispers that drift through the streets all serve as reminders that the past lingers here. The village has not entirely vanished. It waits, patient and observant, for the next visitor to enter its streets, to feel its chill, and perhaps to catch a glimpse of what still roams beneath the trees. The village of Briarwood is a place of foreboding and mystery, where the living and the dead coexist in an eternal dance. Every corner of Briarwood tells a story. The doors, the streets, the empty asisa, they all bear witness to lives interrupted, routines frozen in place, and mysteries that refuse to be solved. The air carries the weight of centuries, the voices of the lost echoing across the valley, and the cold winds that sweep through the narrow pass whisper secrets to anyone daring enough to listen. In Briarwood, the past never truly dies. It lingers, visible and invisible, waiting to be felt by anyone willing to step into its silent streets. Silver Creek rests in a remote mountain valley, its history etched into the landscape by the hands of miners who once carved their lives from rock and soil. In its prime, the village was alive with the clatter of pickaxes, the rhythmic pounding of hammers, and the constant hum of activity from dawn until dusk. Miners hauled silver ore from hillsides, blacksmiths shaped tools in smoky workshops, and families filled small wooden homes, their laughter and chatter blending with the creaking of wagons and the barking of dogs. But as the mines grew exhausted and strange accidents began to claim lives, the town slowly emptied. Eventually, it was abandoned entirely, leaving Silver Creek to the fog, the forest, and the wind that whispers through its empty streets. Today, Silver Creek is overgrown, yet retains the outline of its former life. Wooden shacks lean precariously, roofs sagged and moss-covered, while rusted mining carts sit derailed on tracks swallowed by weeds. The main street, once bustling with trade and conversation, is now cracked and littered with debris, with lantern posts standing like silent sentinels. Hikers and explorers who wander through the village often speak of an otherworldly presence, an energy that lingers like smoke. The air feels thick, heavy with history, carrying faint echoes of the past that cling stubbornly to the valley. The most commonly reported phenomenon is the sight of lanterns swinging along abandoned streets. Hikers describe them as small, golden lights bobbing gently, moving as if carried by invisible hands. Sometimes they appear stationary, hanging in doorways or swaying above empty carts, as if waiting for someone to return. At other times, they drift slowly down the streets, illuminating broken windows and the outlines of ruined homes, casting long, flickering shadows that seem to dance along the walls. Those who attempt to approach the lanterns often find them vanishing abruptly, leaving only a faint glow that fades into the mist. Some suggest the lights are the spirits of miners, still patrolling the village, keeping watch over the homes and streets they once knew intimately. Voices are another recurring mystery in Silver Creek. Miners' shouts, the clatter of tools, and the murmur of conversation can be heard echoing from the hillsides and valley floors, particularly at dusk or before dawn. One visitor recounted hearing the unmistakable sound of pickaxes striking rock as he descended a hill, only to find a collapsed mine entrance and no one nearby. Another reported a conversation between two men, arguing quietly over the placement of equipment, voices clear but fading as he tried to locate the source. Sometimes the voices speak words of warning, sometimes laughter, but always with a tone that hints at unfinished business or lingering duty. Those sensitive to the paranormal describe a sense of being observed, as if the voices are aware of intruders and follow them through the fog. Those sensitive to the paranormal describe a sense of being observed, as if the voices are aware of intruders and follow them through the fog. As if the voices are aware of intruders and follow them through the fog. Those sensitive to the paranormal describe a sense of being observed. Fog is a constant companion in Silver Creek, curling along the valley and seeping between structures. Within the mist, hikers report seeing spectral figures emerge and vanish. Miners dressed in period clothing, their faces shadowed and indistinct, are glimpsed working along the streets, hauling ore, or pausing to glance toward those who watch. At times, figures are seen climbing ladders into collapsed shafts or bending to examine tools left behind. Observers often describe a heavy sense of sorrow in these apparitions, a lingering attachment to the life they were forced to leave behind. In some cases, visitors have felt a brush of cold air, a hand grazing their shoulder, or a fleeting shadow moving just beyond their peripheral vision. The village itself seems to resist intrusion. Paths shift subtly, landmarks appear and disappear, and time feels distorted. Hikers who intend to pass through quickly often find themselves wandering the same streets for hours, unable to locate the path they came from. Compasses spin erratically, and electronic devices fail without explanation. Cameras capture streaks of light, blurred figures, or flickering shadows that seem to move with intelligence. Many who spend the night in Silver Creek report vivid dreams, sometimes reliving moments from a Village's past, hearing the clang of metal, the voices of miners, or the rush of water from nearby streams, all blending into a dreamlike echo of life long gone. Despite the dangers, Silver Creek draws those who seek the extraordinary. Ghost hunters, hikers, and paranormal enthusiasts venture into the valley, hoping to witness its lingering mysteries firsthand. Some leave with photographs of glowing lanterns hovering over broken carts or tools. Others return with stories of spectral figures disappearing into fog or distant voices calling names they do not recognize. Campers often wake to sound of footsteps circling their tents, only to find no one there, the night filled with the chill of unseen presences. Silver Creek is more than an abandoned mining village. It is a living echo of its past. The lanterns, voices, and apparitions are reminders. That life, once vibrant, continues to leave its mark, even after the physical structures have decayed. The miners who toiled and lived here may have disappeared, but their energy, memories, and unresolved histories linger, visible and invisible, weaving a haunting tapestry. That defines a valley. Each visitor to Silver Creek experiences it differently, yet all share a sense of awe and unease. The lanterns swing, the voices echo, and spectral figures appear and vanish, reminding anyone who walks these streets that the past is never truly gone. The village waits silently, cloaked in fog and shadows, ready to reveal its secrets to those daring enough to wander through its lantern-lit streets, to listen to the echoes of the lost, and perhaps to feel the presence of miners who never left. Silver Creek, the Lantern Village, stands as a testament to lives interrupted, to work and community that vanished, and to mysterious persistence of memory itself. In the cold, foggy silence of the valley, it waits, quietly and patiently, offering glimpses of the past anyone willing to see and hear. Its stories are carried in the swinging lanterns, whispered in voices across the mountains, and felt in the fleeting presence of spectral figures who continue to walk its streets, guardians of a village that refuses to fade entirely. Hollow Oak sits hidden in a dense forest, a village long abandoned but never forgotten. Decades ago, It was a quiet settlement, home to families who lived simple lives among the towering oaks and rolling meadows. At the center of the village stood a small schoolhouse, the heart of the community. Childrena-esque laughter spilled from its windows, mixing with the scent of chalk and wood smoke, while parents gathered along the paths, exchanging news and tending gardens. Life was modest but full, a rhythm of learning, play, and the steady passage of seasons. That rhythm ended abruptly one cold autumn evening, when a fire consumed the schoolhouse. Flames tore through the timber and shingles, the screams and cries of panic echoing across the forest. By morning, the building was reduced to smoldering ashes, and the village was never the same. Families gradually left, unable to bear the loss, leaving Hollow Oak to the forest to rot and crumble, and to the shadows that never seemed to leave. Today, Hollow Oak is silent, except for the wind that moves through the skeletal remains of cabins and barns. Trees grow unchecked, their roots splitting foundations and crawling over pathways once trodden by villagers. The remnants of the schoolhouse are particularly haunting. Charred beams protrude from the ground, blackened and brittle, while the walls are gone, leaving only the scorched outline of what once was. Visitors report a strange energy here, a heaviness that sits in the chest and prickles the skin. Hikers and explorers often speak of the sound of children playing, laughter, skipping, the clatter of toisa, but whenever they turn to look, the forest is empty. The voices seem to come from all directions at once, weaving around the trees, drifting over ruined fences, and vanishing into the night. One of the most chilling aspects of Hollow Oak is the handprints. Tiny, perfect impressions appear on decaying doors, window frames, and even tree trunks. They are clean and distinct, as if pressed moments ago, yet no living hand could have left them. Visitors recount brushing their fingers across these prints, only to feel a sudden cold, a sharp chill that seems to run deep into the bones. Sometimes the handprints appear where none existed the day before, a silent and inexplicable reminder that the children of Hollow Oak have not entirely vanished. Photographs capture them inconsistently. Some appear clear and crisp, others vanish entirely when developed, leaving blank surfaces where the prints should be. Shadowy children are another frequent report. Explorers moving along overgrown paths often glimpse small figures darting between the trees. At first, these glimpses are peripheral of flashes of movement at the corner of the eye, the sense of being watched. When those who see them turn, the figures vanish, leaving only the sound of hurried footsteps crunching leaves and snapping twigs. Some describe seeing children peering out from behind tree trunks, faces blurred or shrouded in darkness, eyes glinting in the fading light. These figures never approach directly, yet their presence is undeniable, lingering on the edge of perception like memories refusing to fade. The forest around Hollow Oak contributes to the otherworldly atmosphere. Trees grow tall and close, forming shadow corridors through which the wind whispers endlessly. Fog settles in low during early mornings and late evenings, thickening around ruined cabins and the remains of the schoolhouse. Within the mist, sounds are amplified, laughter whispers, faint voices calling names, footsteps that seem to circle without beginning or end. Many who venture into the hollow report a disorientation that is difficult to explain. Paths seem to twist and fold on themselves. Familiar landmarks vanish, leaving visitors in a maze of trees, vines, and shadows. Some have claimed to wake from brief naps under the canopy to find themselves at the opposite edge of the village, though they had not walked in that direction. Those who have stayed overnight speak of dreams or visions that bleed into reality. Children appear in the periphery of vision, even while eyes are closed, sometimes holding out hands as if seeking companionship, sometimes running in endless loops, laughing and calling to each other. Doors creak open in the dark. Furniture shifts, and unseen forces brush past, leaving a chill behind. Audio recordings often pick up faint echoes of singing, counting, or the soft tapping of chalk on boards. Even though the schoolhouse is gone, the phenomena are inconsistent but persistent, suggesting that Hollow Oak remembers in ways that defy reason. Despite its reputation, Hollow Oak draws the curious. Paranormal investigators, hikers, and those fascinated by the supernatural wander its overgrown paths. Some leave with stories of tiny hands brushing against them in empty cabins, of shadowy figures vanishing into trees, or of laughter echoing long into the night. Others feel only the weight of silence, a lingering sadness that permeates every ruin and every rusted hinge. All agree that the village is alive in some sense, held together by the memories of the children who played there and the tragedy that ended their lives in the schoolhouse fire. Hollow Oak is more than a deserted village. It is a place suspended between past and present. The laughter, the whispers, the handprints, and the shadowy figures all serve as reminders that life here did not end, that some part of the children remains tethered to the land. Every step through the twisted paths, every glance at the remains of the schoolhouse, and every rustle of leaves carries the weight of memory and loss. The forest has claimed the village, but it cannot claim the spirits, and Hollow Oak endures, as the home of the children that never left. Blackwater Crossing lies beneath the dark waters of a river, a village swallowed by the tide after a dam project submerged the valley decades ago. Once, it was a quiet community nestled along the riverbanks, with wooden homes, docks, and a small town square where locals gathered to trade, laugh, and share stories. Children ran barefoot along the shoreline, skipping stones across the water, while fishermen pushed their boats into the river at dawn, returning with nets full of fish. Life followed the rhythm of the river, calm and steady, until the government approved the construction of a dam to provide power and irrigation for nearby towns. Residents were forced to leave, their homes abandoned, and when the waters rose, Blackwater Crossing disappeared beneath the current, leaving only memory, rumor, and a lingering sense of loss. Today, the river runs over the foundations of the village, its surface often glassy and still, reflecting the surrounding forest and sky. Yet beneath that calm, the past refuses to rest. Fishermen who navigate the waters at night report an unnerving presence. Lanterns appear to bob on the water at its surface, moving slowly as though someone is paddling a boat, though no vessel exists. Some say the lights follow them, maintaining a distance but never disappearing completely. Others describe sudden flashes beneath the surface, glimpses of rooftops or tree branches protruding from the water, distorted and shimmering in the moonlight. It is as though Blackwater Crossing has left a spectral imprint on the river, visible only to those who venture too close. Shadowy figures are a common experience for those on the river. Visitors speak of pale shapes standing motionless in the shallow waters near the shore, faces indistinct but watching intently. Sometimes the figures are children, small silhouettes that wade to the water or run along the sunken streets. Other times, they appear as adults, silent and still, their forms only visible when light reflects off the surface of the river. Witnesses often feel the same chill when these figures are present, a cold that seeps into bone and clothing, accompanied by the sensation of being observed. Those who attempt to approach report the shapes vanishing suddenly, leaving ripples where solid forms should have been, or dissolving into fog that often clings to the water in the early morning. The river itself seems alive with the memory of the village. At night, a low, mournful whisper sometimes rises from the current, faint but unmistakable. Words of warning, pleas for help, or the names of residents echo over the water, carried on the wind. Some fishermen claim to have heard entire conversations, arguments between villagers long gone, or the laughter of children playing along streets that no longer exist. Others report the smell of smoke or cooking fires that linger briefly above the surface, only to vanish when investigated. The phenomenon is inconsistent yet persistent, a spectral residue of the lives interrupted when the water claimed the town. Blackwater Crossing as haunting is not limited to sound and sight. Many describe a sense of disorientation while on the river. Paths that should be familiar twist unexpectedly, Landmarks appear and vanish, and the flow of time feels altered. Compasses sometimes spin aimlessly, while electronic devices fail, leaving fishermen to rely on instinct and memory. Those who linger too long often feel a tug, a subtle force guiding them toward the center of the flooded village, as if the water itself is pulling them into the past. Some have reported visions of submerged streets and buildings, glimpses of furniture, carts, and tools suspended beneath the surface, perfectly preserved yet eerily out of reach. The dam that submerged Blackwater Crossing was intended to bring progress and prosperity, but it also trapped memory in the water. Paranormal investigators, historians, and thrill seekers have documented strange activity over the years. Cameras capture faint lights drifting over the surface or blurred human shapes moving just beneath. Audio recorders pick up whispers, laughter, or the sound of Childrina-esque footsteps splashing in the water. Thermal sensors sometimes detect heat in places where none should exist. And even radar equipment occasionally picks up anomalies under the riverbed, as if remnants of buildings or people remain in suspended animation. Each investigation only deepens the mystery, suggesting that Blackwater Crossing's story is far from over. Despite the warnings, the river draws those curious about the paranormal. Fishermen, adventurers, and ghost hunters navigate its waters, hoping to witness the spectral remnants of the drowned village. Some return with photographs of glowing lights or misty figures reflected on the water-esque surface. Others speak of whispers that call their names, or the fleeting sight of a child standing in water too deep for them to be alive. Campers along the banks report dreams of the village, glimpses of everyday life interrupted by the rising water, of families fleeing in panic, and of moments frozen forever beneath the river. Blackwater Crossing is more than a village lost to progress. It is a place where memory and water intertwine. The lights, the figures, and the whispers all serve as reminders that the lives once lived here did not end completely. The river holds the echoes of the past, preserving them in liquid form, a living testament to a community interrupted and displaced. Every ripple, every flash of light, every whisper on the wind is a fragment of the village's story, waiting to be witnessed. Those who brave the river feel either the weight of history pressing through the mist, the presence of the drowned village in every shadow and reflection. Blackwater Crossing endures in memory, in the water, and in the whispers of those who dare to listen. It waits silently beneath the surface, a village of light, shadow, and sorrow, forever calling out to the living from the depths of its riverbed. Red Hollow lies tucked deep within a dense forest, a village long reclaimed by nature and shadowed by the memories of its past. Once, it was a quiet farming community, with fields stretching across the valley and wooden homes lying along dirt roads. Families tended crops. Children chased each other across the meadows, and the smoke of hearth fires drifted into the morning sky. Life was simple and steady, the rhythm of planting and harvest dictating the seasons, until a series of unexplained disappearances began to unravel the village. One by one, residents left, and eventually Red Hollow was abandoned entirely. Nature moved quickly, trees growing over paths, and vines climbing the sides of empty homes, until only the skeletal remains of structures and the echoes of a vanished community remained. Today, Red Hollow is a place of eerie beauty and haunting whispers. The forest is thick and unyielding, sunlight barely reaching the forest floor, and paths twist unpredictably between gnarled trees and overgrown fields. Travelers who enter often feel a chill that seems out of place, a cold that seeps into bones and lingers in the air. It is in this stillness that the village's ghostly phenomena appear. The most reported are the glowing orbs that drift along the paths and across the fields. Some are small and flickering, barely brighter than fireflies, while others are larger, cast enough light to illuminate ruined walls or toppled fences. The orbs move deliberately, floating in patterns that seem almost purposeful, sometimes following visitors, sometimes darting into the forest, always maintaining a sense of quiet mystery. Figures are a common sight. Travelers speak of shadowy shapes walking among the ruined homes or across the overgrown fields. At first, these glimpses are fleeting, a flash at the corner of the eye, a shape that seems to move just out of reach. Those who look directly often find nothing, yet the sensation of being watched remains. Some describe seeing people in old-fashioned clothing, their forms faint and blurred, moving as though performing daily chores that no longer exist. Others speak of figures standing still in the middle of fields, facing away, as if waiting for someone or something that will never return. These apparitions vanish when approached, leaving only the rustle of leaves or the crunch of underbrush where a solid form should have been. The ruins themselves carry the weight of memory. Crumbling homes, toppled barns, and broken fences are scattered across the clearing, overgrown with moss and ivy. Travelers often report sudden cold spots near these ruins, areas of frost or chill that appear even in summer. The air in these places feels dense, charged with an unseen presence, and some claim to hear whispers, distant footsteps, or the faint clatter of tools. One hiker recounted resting near the remains of a farmhouse when he felt a small hand brush against his arm, but when he looked, the yard was empty. Others report hearing laughter or childrena-esque voices drifting across fields, only to find no one in sight. These experiences are inconsistent yet persistent, as if the village itself has imprinted its presence onto the land. Red Hollow-esque forest adds to the disorientation. Paths shift subtly, landmarks vanish, and familiar routes seem to loop back on themselves. Hikers describe feeling drawn to certain clearings or ruins, guided by invisible forces, only to find they have circled back to the same spot. Fog often rises in the evenings, curling around trees and fallen structures, and within it, the glowing orbs appear more vivid, the figures more distinct. The mist carries sounds as well as the distant call of a voice, the faint echo of footsteps, the rustle of skirts or kotsa, always present yet impossible to trace. Some visitors wake from short rests. They struggle to recall how they moved or why. The forest and the village seem to have rearranged themselves around the living. Despite the eerie reputation, Red Hollow attracts explorers, ghost hunters, and those drawn to the supernatural. Some come with cameras or recording devices, hoping to capture the elusive lights or figures. Photographs often show streaks of light, blurred shapes, or orbs hovering above ruins. Audio recordings pick up whispers or faint footsteps that fade when traced. Others arrive seeking a personal encounter, and many leave with stories of cold spots, the sensation of unseen eyes following them, or the haunting sight of shadowy figures moving silently through fields. Each visitor experiences a village differently, yet all share the sense of being in the presence of something that refuses to fade, something that has lingered long after the people of Red Hollow disappeared. Red Hollow is more than an abandoned village. It is a place where memory and the unseen converge. The shadowy figures, the whispers, and the sudden chills all serve as reminders that the lives once lived here left traces that persist. Time seems to fold, leaving glimpses of the past visible to those willing to notice. Even as the forest continues to reclaim the village, the essence of Red Hollow remains, alive in its phenomena, haunting travelers who wander its paths and fields. The village waits silently for those who dare enter, its secrets carried in the cold wind, the glow of spectral lights, and the shadows that flit between trees. Each step among the ruins is a step into a world caught between memory and mystery, a place where the past refuses to let go, and where every flicker of light, every shadowed figure, and every whisper in the forest reminds visitors that Red Hollow is not truly empty. It endures as a phantom light's village, a testament to lives interrupted, memories preserved, and mysteries that will never be fully explained. Cedar Grove lies hidden in a remote valley, surrounded by towering cedar trees that have stood for centuries. The village that once existed here was small but lively, with timber-framed homes, cobblestone paths, and gardens carefully tended by families who had lived in the valley for generations. The air was filled with the scent of cedar and fresh soil, and the sound of children playing often mingled with the rhythm of daily chores. Life in Cedar Grove was peaceful, rooted in tradition and the quiet beauty of the forest, until a wave of mysterious deaths began to plague the community. One by one, villagers were found lifeless near the trees, their faces frozen in expressions of fear, their bodies marked by strange bruises and scratches, though no cause was ever determined. Panic spread through the valley, and eventually the surviving families abandoned their homes, leaving the village to the forest and to the ancient cedar trees that had always watched over it. Today, Cedar Grove is overgrown and silent, yet it hums with an energy that unsettles even the most skeptical visitor. The trees dominate the landscape, their thick trunks rising skyward, branches intertwining to form a nearly impenetrable canopy. The village structures remain as weathered relics, roofs sagging under centuries of exposure, doors hanging crooked on their hinges, and moss creeping over stone foundations. The forest floor is littered with fallen branches and thick undergrowth, but those who wander the paths often sense movement just beyond their vision. Shadowy figures have been reported climbing the trees, moving among the branches with an eerie grace, pause and to peer down at intruders before disappearing into the darkness. Hikers and explorers describe a feeling of being watched, a tension in the air that tightens with every step, as if the trees themselves are alive and aware. The trees of Cedar Grove are central to its haunting. Visitors often report hearing the creak of massive limbs swaying in the breeze, even when the air is still and calm. The sound is low and resonant, echoing to the valley and giving the sensation that the forest is whispering secrets. Some say the trees groan as if in pain or protest, while others describe a rhythmic movement of branches, as though the trees are responding to unseen forces or communicating with one another. On foggy mornings, when the light is dim and the forest is cloaked in mist, the ancient cedars seem to lean closer, their branches brushing together in ways that create the illusion of figures shifting among them. The combination of shadow, sound, and smell of the resinous scent of Sadara creates a presence that is palpable, almost suffocating to those unfamiliar with the valley. Voices are another common phenomenon in Cedar Grove. Visitors often report hearing chanting in a language no one can recognize, a low, melodic hum that seems to rise and fall with the wind. The chants sometimes appear to come from the treetops, distant and elusive, yet their presence is undeniable. Hikers and paranormal investigators alike have described feeling compelled to follow the voices, only to find themselves led in circles or arriving at clearings where no one is present. Some claim the chanting is accompanied by faint shadows, silhouettes that move along the ground or among the trees, vanishing when approached. Others report the sensation of being Tacheta a brush of a hand, a cold finger against the shoulder, or the whisper breath on their necka, though no living person is there. The village structures themselves carry an eerie presence. Abandoned homes have walls covered in moss and ivy, windows shattered or missing, yet footprints of small, childlike, or delicatia sometimes appear on the threshold or on the overgrown paths, vanishing when examined. Doors occasionally swing open or shut with a forceful creak, while interior spaces feel cold, dense, and heavy with a presence that cannot be seen. Some explorers report fleeting glimpses of shadowy figures moving inside, sometimes appearing human, sometimes blurred and formless, like smoke or mist. It is as if the villagers who once lived Urea or something entirely different remain tied to the structures and the surrounding forest, existing in a layer of reality that overlaps with our own. Those who venture into Cedar Grove often experience disorientation. Paths that appear straight curve unpredictably, familiar landmarks vanish, and the forest seems to rearrange itself around them. Compasses spin erratically and electronic devices fail or produce distorted readings. The sense of time is unreliable. An hour may feel like minutes, or a few minutes stretch into what seems like hours. Fog and shadows amplify this effect, making the forest labyrinthine and giving the impression that every turn brings one closer to the center of the haunting. Despite the danger and the unsettling phenomena, Cedar Grove continues to attract those curious about the paranormal. Hikers, ghost hunters, and researchers come seeking to witness the shadowy figures, the creaking trees, and the chanting voices firsthand. Some lead with photographs capturing fleeting shadows, streaks of light, or the outline of figures among the branches. Others speak of dreams that mirror the forest, of waking in the mist with the echoes of chanting still in their ears. Every visitor reports a lingering presence, a feeling of being watched, guided, or even judged by the forest itself. Cedar Grove is more than an abandoned village. the shadows in the trees, the whispering branches, and the chanting voices all serve as reminders that the past is not gone, preserving the memory of lives lost and secrets never revealed. Every rustle, every shift in shadow, and every distant chant is a fragment of story that refuses to fade, a warning to those who enter, and a testament to the spirits of the elder trees that guard this hidden, haunted valley. Stonebridge rests at the convergence of two narrow valleys, where a small river winds beneath the arches of old stone bridges. Centuries ago, it was a bustling trade hub, a place where merchants from distant towns came to exchange goods, barter for wares, and settle matters of business. Wooden carts rattled across the cobblestone streets, horses whinnied at the gates of inns, and the air was thick with the smells of bread baking, iron from blacksmiths' shops, and the scent of river water. Townspeople worked in rhythm. Merchants shouted from market stalls, and children ran along the quays, their laughter carrying across the bridges. After a severe economic collapse, trade dwindled, families left in search of opportunity elsewhere, and Stonebridge slowly emptied. Buildings fell into decay, roads became overgrown, and the bridges, once strong and bustling, were left to weather storms and time alone. Today, Stonebridge is a place reclaimed by nature, yet retains a lingering pulse of the lives that once moved through it. The stone bridges still span the river, moss-covered and worn, their arches reflecting in the water below. Old roads twist through overgrown fields, and trees encroach upon former market squares. Hikers and visitors often report an uncanny sense of presence, a feeling that the town has not entirely vanished, that its energy lingers in the air like a ghostly echo of its past. Shadows seem to move along the edges of vision, figures crossing the stone bridges, as the continuing routines long since ended. Phantom wagons are another frequent report in Stonebridge. Travelers recount seeing carts rolling along the cracked roads, their wheels creaking and bouncing as though heavily laden, though no horses pull them. Occasionally, the shadowy outline of a merchant follows, guiding the vehicle along paths now covered in grass and weeds. The wagons appear most often at dawn or twilight, moving slowly and deliberately, vanishing without a trace as the mist thickens or as the observer approaches. Some claim to hear the soft rumble of hooves, the murmur of voices, or the clatter of metal tools, a soundscape of commerce preserved in spectral form. Mysterious lanterns often appear along old streets and pathways, sometimes moving as if carried by invisible hands, sometimes floating independently in patterns that suggest direction or guidance. The glow of the lantern seems warm yet otherworldly, illuminating the decay while hinting at the lives that once thrived here. Some say the lanterns are the spirits of merchants guiding travelers, ensuring that even in abandonment, the town continues its role as a hub of passage. The stone bridges themselves are central to Stonebridge's haunting. Hikers often feel a shift in temperature while crossing, a chill that seeps through boots and clothing. Shadows flit along the arches, and faint whispers can be heard echoing across the water. Occasionally, a figure appears fully visible on the bridge, pausing mid-step as if noticing the observer, before disappearing into the morning fog. The combination of sight, sound, and tocha, the cold stone underfoot, the rustle of unseen movement, and the murmur of voices. The cold stone underfoot, the rustle of unseen movement, and the murmur of voices creates a powerful sense of presence, as if the bridges are portals connecting the present to the town's vanished life. Stonebridge also has a disorienting effect on visitors. Paths twist in unexpected directions, familiar landmarks vanish, and travelers often find themselves circling the same square or bridge without realizing it. Fog rises from the river and settles over roads and rooftops, amplifying a sense of being guided or observed. Compasses spin, electronics fail, and the usual markers of orientation become unreliable. Those who venture deep into the town often describe an overwhelming feeling that the past is unfolding alongside them. Memories of the vanished town press close, waiting to be seen or heard. Despite the abandoned state, Stonebridge continues to attract explorers, ghost hunters, and those drawn to the supernatural. Photographs often capture fleeting shapes, streaks of light, or outlines of figures moving along the bridges. Campers along the river report waking to the faint glow of lanterns drifting toward them, or to the soft tap of footsteps on cobblestones outside their tents. Audio recordings pick up murmured conversations, the clatter of tools, or the distant rumble of wagons that vanish before they can be traced. Campers along the river report waking to the faint glow of lanterns drifting toward them, or to the soft tap of footsteps on cobblestones outside their tents. Every visitor experiences the town differently, yet all share the sense that Stonebridge is alive in some spectral form, preserved by memory and the spirits of its lost inhabitants. Stonebridge is more than an abandoned village. It is a place where the echoes of commerce and community persist. The shadowy figures, phantom wagons, and guiding lanterns serve as reminders that the town, though empty of life, continues to exist in another form. Every bridge crossed, every ruined street passed, and every flicker of light in the mist tells a story of the vanished merchants, of routines repeated endlessly in spectral echo, and of a town that refuses to vanish completely from the valley it once called home. Foggy Hollow sits in a secluded valley, where the morning mist never fully lifts, and the air is perpetually thick with fog. Centuries ago, it was a small pioneer settlement, carved out of the wilderness by families seeking a new life. The pioneers built simple wooden cabins, tilled the rocky soil, and hunted the surrounding forest to sustain themselves. Winters were harsh and unrelenting, snow piling high against doorways and chilling even the warmest hearts. Despite the hardships, the villagers persevered, their lives marked by labor, community, and the quiet rhythm of survival. But the valley was cruel, and one particularly brutal winter claimed the lives of nearly every resident. Those who survived eventually left, abandoning Foggy Hollow to the fog and the forest. Today, Foggy Hollow is silent except for the occasional creak of decaying wood and the whisper of wind through skeletal trees. The cabins stand weathered and collapsed, their roofs sagging, doors hanging crooked on rusted hinges, and chimneys crumbling into the ground. Paths that once connected homes are now overgrown, with moss-covered stones marking the layout of a village slowly being reclaimed by nature. Travelers who venture into the valley speak of an immediate chill, a damp cold that seems to seep into bones and linger long after leaving. The fog clings stubbornly, obscuring vision, dampening sound, and creating a sense of isolation so complete it feels as if the outside world no longer exists. Within the fog, phenomena that defy explanation are common. Visitors often hear screams echoing across the valley, sharp and desperate, as though the victims of past winters are still trapped within the mist. Those who investigate often find only silence and the faint scent of smoke or wood smoke, memories of long-extinguished fires lingering in the air. Alongside these cries, hikers report a sense of being watched, the sensation of invisible eyes tracking every step, and occasional to chase a cold, fleeting, and impossible to attribute to any living hand. Shadowy silhouettes are another frequent occurrence. Explorers describe figures moving just beyond the edge of vision, appearing and disappearing within the thick mist. Sometimes they seem human, wandering between collapsed cabins or across overgrown fields, their movements slow and deliberate. At other times, the shadows take on more ambiguous forms, limbs elongated, shapes distorted by the fog, yet unmistakably alive in appearance. Those who attempt to focus on the figures often find them fading into the gray, leaving only the echo of a footstep or a rustle of brush in their wake. Some witnesses report glimpsing entire families moving silently, following paths long forgotten, as though reenacting the lives they once led in the valley. The cabins themselves carry an unsettling presence. Doors sometimes swing open or close without reason, creaking loudly in the still air. Furniture inside is often found disturbed, chairs toppled, or objects shifted, despite the buildings being long abandoned. Some explorers report seeing small handprints appear on the frost-covered windows, only to vanish when approached. Others hear soft whispers inside the empty rooms, voices speaking in tones too low to understand, or catching fragments of old pioneer speech repeating in loops, as if the fog itself has absorbed and preserved them. Even the most skeptical visitors describe a tangible weight, a sensation that the past lingers here and that the pioneers of spirits have not moved on. The valley's geography amplifies the haunting. Paths twist unpredictably, making it difficult to navigate, and familiar landmarks vanish when observed from different angles. Time seems distorted within Foggy Hollow. A short walk can feel like hours, and moments can stretch or compress inexplicably. Compasses and electronic devices frequently fail, as if the environment interferes with orientation and perception. The mist, the valley, and the decaying village work together to create an immersive experience that blurs the line between the living and the dead. Despite its ominous reputation, Foggy Hollow attracts ghost hunters, hikers, and curious travelers drawn to the Vallea's mysteries. Some return with photographs capturing blurred figures or streaks of light amid the fog. Audio recordings pick up screams, whispers, or the faint clatter of footsteps on wooden floors and stone paths. Campers along the valley report waking to the sensation of someone sitting near their tents, breathing on their neck, or brushing past them in the dead of night. Every visitor leaves changed, carrying the weight of a place where the past refuses to release its hold, where the fog preserves memory as though it were tangible. Foggy Hollow is more than an abandoned village. It is a living monument to the pioneers who perish here, a valley suspended between past and present. The fog, the shadows, the screams, and the ghostly touches are fragments of life frozen in time, echoing endlessly across the valley. Each step along overgrown paths, each glance through the swirling mist, and every whispered sound is a reminder that the village and its people have not entirely vanished. Foggy Hollow endures as a village of endless mist, where the spirits of those who struggled and died in harsh winters continue to roam, waiting to be witnessed by anyone daring enough to enter their gray, haunting world. Ashwood lies in a remote valley, a village marked forever by fire and memory. Decades ago, it was a thriving settlement, with timber-frame houses, workshops, and a small market square where villagers traded goods and stories. Smoke from chimneys drifted lazily into the sky, and the scent of fresh bread mingled with the resin of nearby forests. Life followed the rhythm of seasons, of planting, harvest, and community, until a wildfire swept through the valley, consuming homes, fields, and forests in a relentless blaze. The fire moved faster than anyone could escape, leaving behind charred timber, ashes, and a silence heavier than the smoke that lingered in the air. Those who survived were forced to abandon the village, leaving Ashwood to the flames and to the memories of those who could not stay. Today, Ashwood is a ruin. Burned structures stand as skeletal reminders of the past. Trees grow irregularly, some reduced to charred trunks, others reaching skyward from roots that somehow survived the blaze. The air is still thick with the faint smell of smoke, even decades later. And those who enter the valley describe an oppressive weight, as if the fire left behind not only destruction, but also lingering energy. The village feels alive in a way that is unsettling. The wind seems to carry voices, and shadows move with purpose among the ruins. Visitors to Ashwood report ghostly figures roaming the remains of the village. Some see firefighters, spectral and solemn, moving through the ashes as if still battling flames that no longer exist. Their forms are translucent, sometimes carrying buckets, axes, or hoses, pausing to glance toward observers before vanishing into the ruinous landscape. Others describe villagers wandering among the burnout homes, calling for companions who were lost to the fire. The voices carry across the valley, sometimes faint whispers, sometimes urgent cries, echoing off the charred walls. Hikers and explorers recount feeling watched, followed, or even gently touched by unseen hands, as though the spirits of Ashwood continue their search for those they could not save. At dusk, the haunting becomes more pronounced. Faint shapes of smoke appear to rise from the ruins, curling into forms that resemble human silhouettes. They drift slowly, sometimes standing motionless in the middle of former streets, sometimes moving as if in conversation. The shapes are never static. They shift and flicker with the dying light, vanishing when approached, leaving only a lingering smell of burning wood and a faint warmth in the air. Leaving only a lingering smell of burning wood and a faint warmth in the air. These phenomena give the impression that the village itself remembers the fire, preserving the memory of the people and events in a spectral form. The ruins themselves are full of subtle signs of activity. Doors sway on broken hinges. Roof timbers creak as if underfoot. Ashes sometimes stir as though disturbed by invisible movement. Explorers report glimpsing shadows moving across walls. Indistinct figures that disappear when fully observed. Footsteps are heard crunching on ash-covered ground, though no living person is near. Even objects left in the ruinsa, charred tools, scorched furniture, remnants of a mesa, sometimes seem to shift slightly, suggesting the presence of unseen hands still at work. The landscape of Ashwood adds to the otherworldly experience. The valley is narrow, and the wind funnels through the ruins, carrying sounds from one end to another. Echoes of calls and footsteps bounce unpredictably, giving visitors the impression that the village is alive, responding to their presence. Paths that once led to the settlement are now overgrown and obscured, and hikers often find themselves circling the same burned-out homes, disoriented and unsettled. Mist occasionally drifts in, blending with the faint smoke and creating an ethereal atmosphere where shadows and shapes are difficult to distinguish from reality. Despite the eerie reputation, Ashwood attracts ghost hunters, hikers, and those drawn to the paranormal. Cameras often capture flickering lights, ghostly outlines, or smoke shapes that seem almost human. Audio recordings pick up voices, footsteps, or the faint clanging of tools, as if the work of the village continues in another plane. Campers near the ruins have reported waking to the sensation of being touched, the feeling of someone brushing past, or hearing cries for help echoing in the night. Every visitor leaves with a sense that the fire, though long past, continues to shape the village, and that the spirits of Ashwood have not fully moved on. Ashwood is more than a burned village. It is a place where memory and tragedy linger. The ghostly figures, the drifting smoke shapes, and the echoing voices all serve as reminders that the lives once lived here did not disappear entirely. Every charred beam, every ruined foundation, and every ash-covered path carries the imprint of history, preserved in spectral form. The village waits silently in the valley, haunted and alive, a testament to survival, loss, and the enduring presence of those who perished in the fire. Ashwood, the fire-scarred village, endures as a place where the past is never forgotten, where the echoes of tragedy are visible in smoke and shadow, and where visitors may still glimpse the spirits of firefighters and villagers, endlessly wandering through the ashes of their former lives. Willow Bend rests in a quiet valley, where the gentle bend of river once reflected the lights of a thriving village. Generations ago, it was a small but vibrant community, built around a large stone church that dominated the center of town. The church was renowned for its choir, whose voices filled the air each morning and evening, carrying hymns and sacred songs across the streets and fields. Villagers lived their lives in rhythm with the church bells, the flow of work, and the seasonal festivals that brought everyone together. Children played along the riverbanks. Markets bustled with activity, and the scent of baking bread and fresh flowers drifted through the air. Life in Willow Bend was simple, peaceful, and marked by devotion and community, until the village was abandoned for reasons that remain shrouded in mystery. Today, Willow Bend is overgrown and silent, yet it is far from empty. The streets are lined with weathered houses, their windows shattered or clouded with dust and age. Gardens are choked with weeds, and stone pathways are cracked. Yet the remains of the church still stand, towering and formidable, its bell tower a jagged silhouette against the horizon. Visitors report an immediate sense of melancholy upon entering the village, as if the air itself carries the weight of memory. The quiet is almost unnatural, broken only by the rustle of leaves or the soft lap of the river. And yet, within that silence, the echoes of the past begin to emerge. The most commonly reported phenomenon is the sound of music. At night, travelers describe hearing hymns drifting from the direction of the church, clear and harmonious, as if the choir were still practicing for the congregation. The voices carry through the empty streets, sometimes accompanied by the faint sounds of footsteps on stone floors, the creak of pews, or the soft rustle of robes. Some listeners can pick out individual voices, a soprano rising above the rest or a bass vibrating through the walls. The songs are unmistakably human, yet when visitors enter the church, they find it empty. There are no choirs, no living villagers, yet the music continues, drifting and fading as if carried by the very air of Willow Bend. Apparitions are another frequent occurrence. Visitors often describe seeing the figures of nuns moving to the halls of the church, their habits flowing, faces solemn yet faintly illuminated in the moonlight. Sometimes they appear singing at the altar, sometimes gliding down corridors or appearing from doorways. Other apparitions take the form of villagers, walking the streets, carrying lanterns, or pausing at windows, as if greeting someone long gone. These figures rarely interact directly with visitors, yet their presence is undeniable. Those who follow them often find themselves guided along specific paths or led to areas of the village they would not have discovered otherwise. At times, the figures vanish when approached, leaving only the echo of their movement and a lingering sense of sorrow. Candles are another mysterious element of Willow Bend. Travelers report seeing flickering lights in windows, along streets, or inside the church, yet upon inspection, no source of flame can be found. Some witnesses have attempted to capture the lights in photographs or video, only to find them shifting or vanishing in the frame. The village has a disorienting effect on visitors. Paths twist subtly, familiar landmarks seem to shift, and the church, despite its size, often appears to loom larger than memory suggests. Fog or mist sometimes rolls in from the river, further obscuring vision and amplifying sounds, causing the hymns and footsteps to echo unnaturally. Time itself feels altered. A brief walk can seem to stretch into hours, and moments of silence are punctuated by sudden, inexplicable sounds. Hikers and explorers often report a sensation of being watched, followed, or accompanied by unseen presences, as if the village itself is aware of every movement. Despite its eerie reputation, Willow Bend attracts those drawn to the paranormal, historians, and travelers intrigued by its history. Photographs often capture flickers of light, blurred figures in the streets, or shadows inside the church that seem distinctly human. Audio recordings occasionally pick up fragments of hymns or the soft murmur of voices, even when no one is present. Campers near the church have reported waking to the sensation of someone standing near their tents, the faint brushing of robes, or a lull of voices singing in the darkness. Each visitor experiences Willow Bend differently, yet all share the sense that the village remains alive in some spectral form, preserved by memory and devotion. Willow Bend is more than an abandoned village. It is a place where music, memory, and spirit converge. The hymns, apparitions, and flickering candles serve as reminders that the lives once lived here left a lasting imprint, and that the echoes of devotion persist even after centuries of abandonment. Every creaking door, every shadow along the streets, and every note of a ghostly song is a fragment of a world suspended between past and present. Willow Bend endures as the village of sorrowful songs, a place where the melodies of the departed still drift across the river, the streets, and the church, calling out to anyone willing to listen. The melodies of the departed still drift across the river, the streets, and the church, calling out to anyone willing to listen. Mossy Creek lies hidden in a remote valley, a village slowly swallowed by the relentless growth of the surrounding forest. Once, it was a modest settlement, with wooden homes, small shops, and streets lined with cobblestones that echo with the footsteps of villagers. Families tended gardens, children played near the creek, and smoke from hearths drifted lazily into the sky. The town existed in harmony with the surrounding woods. Yet over time, residents left to some seeking better opportunities, others driven away by inexplicable events that unsettled even the hardiest of villagers. Left behind, Mossy Creek became a ghost town. But the forest did not simply reclaim it. It transformed the village, blending stone and timber with moss, ivy, and towering trees, until the boundaries between human settlement and wilderness were indistinguishable. Today, Mossy Creek is overgrown and silent, yet it pulses with a strange vitality. Trees rise through cracked cobblestones, their roots prying open streets and sidewalks, curling around abandoned homes and shops. Moss carpets the ground so thickly that footsteps sink into it, muffling sound yet amplifying the sensation of being watched. Visitors report that the forest seems alive in a way that is unsettling. Branches sway as if moved by unseen hands. Trunks shift slightly when unobserved, and leaves rustle in patterns that suggest intent. Hikers and paranormal investigators alike describe a feeling of the trees observing them, tracking their movements, and communicating in a language that is felt rather than heard. Phantom footsteps are a common phenomenon throughout Mossy Creek. Walkers on moss-covered streets often hear the crunch and echo of steps behind them, though no one is visible. The sound sometimes circles around them, following them from alley to alley, or crossing streets in ways that make no sense in the physical layout of the village. Some describe the footsteps as hurried and anxious, as though Summonia or something is fleeing or searching. Others are slow and deliberate, carrying a weight that suggests purpose or warning. Those who try to confront the source rarely find anything tangible, yet the sensation of presence is so strong that many choose to leave the area quickly. Whispers accompany the villagia as spectral activity. Visitors often report hearing voices drifting through the trees, urgent and low, warning them to leave or speaking in half-formed phrases that vanish when listened to closely, sometimes taking on tonalities that seem alien. These whispers often rise in moments of heightened fear, carried by wind currents that seem to originate within the forest itself. Some hikers claim the whispers repeat warnings long after they have left the valley, echoing in their minds, while others speak of being compelled to follow or turn away by the tonal direction of the voices. It is as if the forest itself is a guardian, enforcing boundaries and protecting the village from unwanted intrusion. The trees of Mossy Creek are central to its haunting. Branches bend in impossible angles, roots move slowly across paths, and trunks sometimes appear to lean toward visitors as if observing. Paranormal investigators have recorded images of trunks that seem to shift slightly between shots, branches that blur as if caught in motion, and shadows that move independently of light sources. 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 Explorers report sensation of the forest closing in, narrowing streets and pathways, and guiding them toward or away from certain areas without explanation. Buildings in Mossy Creek are no less affected. Wooden homes lean under the weight of overgrown trees, roofs caving beneath layers of moss, and windows broken or obscured by creeping vines. Doors swing with no wind. Floorboards creak under invisible steps, and objects left behind sometimes appear shifted when revisited. Many report fleeting glimpses of figures in the ruinsa humanoid, but blurred and indistincta, moving among the trees or appearing in windows, for only a moment before vanishing. Some say these forms resemble former residents, yet distorted by the forest, while others see entirely unrecognizable shapes, as if the very spirit of the wilderness has taken human form. Visitors often describe a profound sense of disorientation within Mossy Creek. The forest and village merge, pathways twist unexpectedly, and landmarks shift between moments of observation. Compasses spin erratically, electronics fail, and the familiar markers of orientation become unreliable. Fog and mist that gather in low areas further amplify the illusion of movement and presence. Many report an overwhelming sensation of being drawn toward the village's center, where an especially dense grove of trees seems to pulse with unseen energy. Despite its eerie reputation, Mossy Creek continues to draw explorers, ghost hunters, and those intrigued by the supernatural. Photographs sometimes capture shifting shadows, or forms that are difficult to explain. Audio recordings pick up whispers, footsteps, and faint rustling in areas with no wind. Campers describe waking to the sensation of being touched or followed, or seeing long-limbed shadows moving through the mist. Each visitor experiences a village differently. All share a sense that Mossy Creek is not truly abandoned, but alive in a way that defies natural explanation. Mossy Creek is more than an overgrown village. It is a living entity where memory, nature, and the supernatural intertwine. The phantom footsteps, the whispering voices, and the moving trees serve as reminders that the lives once lived here are preserved in both spirit and forest. Every moss-covered path, twisted root, and shifting shadow tells a story of a village that has not entirely vanished, but endures, watching and warning all who enter. Mossy Creek remains a living forest, a place where human abandonment gave rise to a sentient wilderness, haunting, protective, and eternally alive. Iglia nest clings to the edge of a rugged mountain ridge, a village built high above the valley below, where the wind bites sharp and clouds gather around peaks like restless spirits. Centuries ago, it was a remote but thriving settlement. Families lived in timber homes anchored to rocky slopes, herding goats, tending terraces of hardy crops, and navigating narrow paths carved into cliffs. The village-esque isolation gave rise to strong traditions and a deep reverence for ancestry. It was said that the elders watched over each generation, guiding the living with wisdom and warning, ensuring survival in the harsh mountain environment. Over time, however, misfortune struck. Landslides, harsh winters, and dwindling resources forced residents to leave. Iglia's nest was gradually abandoned, yet the legends say that the ancestors never left. Today, the village is silent but far from lifeless. The homes, though weathered and cracked, cling stubbornly to cliffs and ridges. Stone walls crumble where vegetation has taken hold, and terraces are now overgrown with grass and shrubs. The wind whistles through narrow paths and abandoned doorways, carrying with it a sense of watchfulness that unsettles even the most intrepid visitors. Those who enter Eagle's Nest often describe an overwhelming feeling of being observed, a sense that unseen eyes are following every step along the cliffside paths. Hikers and explorers speak of a presence that is ancient, patient, and endlessly attentive, as though the village itself is alive to the memory of its ancestors. The most commonly reported phenomena are the glowing eyes that appear among the trees and rocks. As dusk falls or fog drifts along the ridge, pairs of lights can be seen peering from shadows, often high in the canopy or perched on rocky outcroppings. Sometimes these lights seem fixed, unblinking, like silent sentinels, and other times they move slowly, tracking visitors as they traverse the paths. Witnesses describe a sense of unease, a feeling that the eyes are measuring, judging, or warning intruders of unseen dangers. Those brave enough to approach often find the trees empty, the rocks still, yet the sensation of being observed persists long after the lights have vanished. Shadowy figures are another frequent occurrence. Observers report seeing tall, human-like shapes emerging from mist or along cliff edges at dawn or twilight. These watchers sometimes appear to move deliberately along paths, pausing as if acknowledging the living, before disappearing behind rocks or trees. The figures are rarely aggressive, yet their presence conveys authority and vigilance, a reminder that Iglia's Nest was not abandoned but continues to exist under the guardianship of those who came before. Some hikers recount seeing groups of these figures silently congregating on ridges, as if holding counsel, their forms indistinct yet unmistakably human. The wind plays a haunting role in Iglia's Nest. Gusts often carry faint murmurs, unintelligible words, or phrases that resemble ancient tongues. Visitors report hearing what seems to be warnings whispered on the breeze, urging them to leave or to tread carefully along narrow paths. The wind can shift suddenly, lifting sound from the cliffs, echoing voices across ravines, or producing chilling howls that seem almost like cries of disapproval. The wind can shift suddenly, lifting sounds from the cliffs, echoing voices across ravines, or producing chilling howls that seem almost like cries of disapproval. In the stillness of early morning, when the mist clings low and sunlight barely breaks through, weaving a tapestry of sound that hints at vigilance, protection, and the unseen presence of ancestors. The architecture and landscape of Iglia's Nest amplify the haunting. Narrow stone paths twist along steep cliffs, terraces slope sharply, and jagged rocks jut into the sky, creating natural vantage points and hiding places. Travelers often describe a disorienting effect. Familiar paths appear to loop or vanish entirely. Landmarks shift subtly, and the village seems larger and more complex than its maps suggest. Fog and low clouds can obscure vision completely, making even the shortest walk feel perilous. Electronic devices often fail or behave erratically. Compasses spin unpredictably, and light seems to bend strangely across the landscape, further enhancing the sense that the village is guided by unseen hands. Visitors frequently report physical sensations tied to the supernatural activity. Some feel the brush of a hand on their shoulder, the weight of unseen eyes, or a shiver that cannot be explained by wind or altitude. Others recount a sudden compulsion to retreat or to follow paths in a particular direction, guided by intuition or whispers carried on the breeze. Campers report waking to the sense of a presence nearby, eyes upon them from the darkness, or the subtle impression of movement around their tents. Each experience reinforces the impression that Iglia's Nest is not a passive ruin, but a village alive through observation, memory, and vigilance. Eagle's Nest continues to attract explorers, historians, and paranormal enthusiasts drawn by the legends of the Watchers. Photographs sometimes capture shadowy forms on terraces or ridges, lights among the trees, or unusual distortions in the mist. Audio recordings occasionally pick up whispers, creaking footsteps on stone, or the faint rustle of robes or clothing. Visitors leave with stories of being silently followed, watched, and guided, carrying with them a sense that the ancestors of Iglia's Nest remain ever vigilant. Iglia's Nest is more than an abandoned settlement. It is a village where the past endures through the vigilance of spirits. The glowing eyes, shadowy figures, and whispered warnings serve as reminders that the lives once lived here left an enduring imprint. Every terrace, cliff edge, and misty path is a testament to ancestors who watch endlessly, guardians of village suspended between memory and the present. Iglia's Nest endures as a village of watchers, a place where the unseen gaze never ceases, and where every step is observed by those who once called the cliffs their home. Crag Hollow perches on the edge of a jagged mountain range, where steep cliffs and narrow passes define every path. Decades ago, it was a thriving mining village, built into the rocky slopes where veins of or promise wealth to those willing to brave the dangers of the mountains. Timber-framed homes clung to the cliffs, and the mine shaft descended deep into the earth, echoing with the sounds of picks striking stone, carts rattling over tracks, and miners calling warnings to one another. Life in Crag Hollow was hard but purposeful, defined by the rhythm of work, the occasional celebration in the central square, and the tight bonds of community forged in danger. Yet the mountains were merciless. Rock slides were common, and many villagers lost their lives in sudden collapses of earth and stone. Over time, fear, tragedy, and economic decline emptied the village, leaving Crag Hollow to the elements and the echoes of the lives it once held. Today, Crag Hollow is a ruin, its home sagging against cliffs, streets partially buried under landslides and rubble, and the skeletal remains of mine entrances jutting like dark wounds into the mountainside. Yet despite the abandonment, the village is far from silent. Visitors speak of a presence that lingers, an energy born of hard work, fear, and sudden death. And the air feels charged with the memory of tragedy. The cliffs themselves seem alive, rocks shift imperceptibly, and narrow passes echo with noises that have no clear origin. Hikers and explorers report feeling watched as they navigate the treacherous paths, the sensation of eyes and shadows, and an oppressive awareness of the dangers that took so many lives in the Village's heyday. One of the most common phenomena in Crag Hollow is the sound of rocks rolling without cause. Travelers describe sudden clatters down cliff sides, stones tumbling over paths and piling in the streets, though no visible landslide occurs. Sometimes the rocks are small, rattling lightly over cobblestones. Other times, large boulders crash with a deafening roar, yet leave no path of displacement or disturbance in the surrounding landscape. The sounds are unpredictable, sometimes following hikers, sometimes coming from deep within mine shafts, creating the unsettling impression that the village itself is restless, replaying events long past. Shadowy miners are frequently reported. Witnesses describe ghostly figures emerging from the cliffs, appearing at mine entrances, or moving along crumbled streets. They are often indistinct, sometimes seen bending over carts, wielding picks, or walking with heavy steps along overgrown paths. These apparitions vanish when approached, leaving only echoes of their labor or faint impressions in the dust. Some explorers report seeing groups of these miners working silently as if performing a task left unfinished, while others glimpse a solitary figure staring from a mine shaft before dissolving into the shadows. The sense of Lithia, though spectral, remains powerful, as though the village is eternally replaying the rhythms of work and the dangers that claimed so many lives. Handprints on stone walls are another unsettling feature of Crag Hollow. Visitors often report seeing faint, smeared marks on cliffs or remnants of building walls, sometimes high above the ground where no living person could reach. The prints are often accompanied by a chill, as if the touch that left them is still lingering. In some cases, the marks appear in clusters, suggesting frantic effort, struggle, or warning. Occasionally, they seem to shift when observed later. These unexplained handprints reinforce the village's reputation as a place where the past has not entirely let go. The cliffs and mine shafts amplify the haunting. Fog often drifts through the valley, carrying sound and strange waves of footsteps echo, rocks clatter, and whispers travel along the wind. Hikers frequently describe disorientation. Trails appear to change, familiar landmarks vanish, and cliffs seem to shift subtly in perspective. Compasses fail, electronic devices malfunction, and shadows bend unnaturally in the fading light. The very landscape of Crag Hollow seems designed to remind visitors of its dangers, both physical and supernatural. Despite its reputation, Crag Hollow attracts explorers, paranormal investigators. Photographs sometimes capture fleeting shadows at mine entrances, streaks of light along cliff faces, or forms resembling miners working silently in the ruins. Audio recordings pick up rolling stones, faint calls, or even the rhythmic strike of picks against stone where no living person is present. Campers in the village report waking to sensation of being touched by unseen hands, hearing murmurs or urgent warnings, or glimpsing shadowy forms disappearing into the cliffs. Crag Hollow is more than an abandoned mining village. It is a monument to the labor, fear, and tragedy that shaped it. The sound of rolling rocks, the shadowy miners, and the ghostly handprints serve as reminders that the Village's past lives persist in spectral form. Every cracked wall, every steep path, and every mine shaft carries a memory of those who toiled and perished, replayed endlessly for anyone daring enough to enter. Crag Hollow endures as the village of falling rocks, where the mountains themselves seem alive, warning, watching, and preserving the lives of miners long gone, but never forgotten. Darkwater lies hidden on the edge of a vast, stagnant swamp, a village swallowed by mist and memory. Decades ago, it was a small but resilient settlement, where wooden homes were built on stilts above the marshy ground. Families relied on the swamp for sustenance, fishing its murky waters, harvesting herbs and reeds, and trading goods with travelers brave enough to navigate the winding waterways. Life was simple but fragile, defined by the rhythm of the tides, the call of frogs at night, and the steady hum of insects in the thick air. Yet the swamp was treacherous, and over the years, a series of drownings claimed the lives of villagers, leaving families shattered and the settlement increasingly deserted. One by one, The remaining inhabitants abandoned Darkwater, leaving it to rot in the damp embrace of the swamp. Today, the village is overgrown and decaying. Moss creeps over rotting planks. Reeds grow thickly between homes, and stagnant water collects in the hollows of what were once streets. The air is heavy, a mixture of humidity, decay, and the faint tang of swamp gases. Even in daylight, the mist clings stubbornly, curling around trees and the skeletal remains of buildings, creating a sense that the village is suspended in time. Visitors describe a palpable unease upon entering the area, a feeling that unseen eyes follow them along the narrow walkways, and that the swamp itself holds memories of tragedy and loss. Shadowy figures are commonly reported. Travelers often glimpse shapes moving among the trees, gliding across the water, or standing silently on the stilts of abandoned homes. These forms are indistinct, sometimes appearing human, sometimes elongated and warped by the fog, yet they convey unmistakable intent. They are rarely aggressive, but their presence is chilling, and many visitors report an almost immediate instinct to retreat. Some witnesses claim the figures mimic the movements of living humans, raising hands, turning heads, or walking along planks, only to vanish when approached, leaving no trace of steps or disturbance in the water. Ghostly lanterns are another frequent phenomenon. Lights appear to float above the water, bobbing gently as if carried by unseen hands, casting pale reflections across the swamp-esque surface. Sometimes the lanterns drift along narrow channels, illuminating reeds and tree roots with an eerie glow, then disappear into the mist. Other times, they appear in clusters, moving rhythmically as though guiding an invisible procession. Visitors who follow these lights often find themselves led deeper into the swamp, along paths overgrown and nearly invisible, before the lanterns vanish entirely, leaving them disoriented and unnerved. The swamp's natural sounds amplify the haunting. Frogs, insects, and distant splashes are punctuated by softer, unnatural noises. Whispers in the reeds, faint cries for help, or the slap of unseen feet on waterlogged planks. The voices are inconsistent, sometimes clear and urgent, sometimes barely audible, and often vanish the moment one tries to pinpoint their source. Hikers and explorers report hearing names spoken, fragments of conversation, or low murmurs repeating phrases like warnings or laments. Some even describe feeling brushes against their arms or shoulders, as if unseen hands move through the fog, urging them to leave the swamp. Buildings in Darkwater are heavily affected by time and environment. Wooden stilts rot, walls sag, and roofs collapse under the weight of moss and moisture. Doors swing open with no wind. Floorboards creak, and abandoned objects occasionally appear shifted, as if Summonia or something is rearranging them. Some witnesses report fleeting glimpses of figures inside the homes, peering from broken windows, or moving through the fog-laden halls. In other cases, objects such as small tools, lanterns, or baskets seem to lift or shift on their own, leaving behind only a faint ripple in the water or a soft thud. The swamp itself plays a central role in the village's supernatural reputation. Paths through the reeds are narrow and treacherous, shifting underfoot and easily obscured by water or fog. Visitors often describe disorientation, feeling as if the landscape moves around them. Compass and electronic devices frequently fail, and the mist distorts sound and vision, amplifying the sense of unseen observation. Those who venture too far from the remaining walkways report an almost magnetic pull toward the water, as if the swamp itself is drawing them closer to the history of drownings and tragedy that haunts Darkwater. Despite its chilling reputation, Darkwater draws explorers, ghost hunters, and adventurous travelers intrigued by its past. Photographs sometimes capture shadowy forms gliding across the water or lights hovering above the reeds. Audio recordings occasionally pick up whispers, splashes, or soft creaking of planks in the absence of living humans. Campers report waking to the sensation of being watched, hearing footsteps in shallow water, or glimpsing spectral figures vanishing into the fog. Every visitor experiences the swamp differently, yet all share the sense that Darkwater is far from abandoned, that the spirits of those who perish linger, restless and eternal. Darkwater is more than a drowned village. It is a place where memory, tragedy, and the supernatural intertwine. Shadowy figures, ghostly lanterns, and whispers in the reeds serve as reminders that the lives once lived here left an indelible mark. Every moss-covered plank, every mist-shrouded channel, and every ripple on the water carries the presence of the past. Dark water endures as the swamp village, a haunted landscape, where the boundary between life and death is blurred, and the spirits of the drowned continue to roam, waiting to be seen by anyone daring enough to enter their fog-laden world. Hawka S. Perch sits perched atop a wind-swept ridge, a village that seems suspended between the mountains and the sky. Once a modest settlement of stone and timber, it served as a resting point for travelers journeying along narrow, treacherous mountain roads. Inns and small shops lined its cobblestone streets, lanterns flickered at every doorway, and the scent of smoke from hearths mingled with the crisp mountain air. For decades, the village thrived on its reputation as a safe stop for weary wanderers. Yet over time, stories began to circulate here. Stories of travelers disappearing without a trace, leaving their belongings behind, as if swallowed by the night itself. Slowly, fear overtook commerce, and the village became increasingly deserted, leaving empty streets, shuttered windows, and an uneasy quiet that still lingers today. Visitors to Hawk's Perch speak immediately of a palpable sense of unease. The cobblestones are worn and uneven, overgrown in places with moss and weeds. Yet every step seems to echo unnaturally, carrying the impression that unseen eyes are watching. The buildings, though largely intact, are weathered and sagging. Roofs lean precariously, windows are broken or clouded with grime, and doorways seem to breathe shadows into the streets. Even in daylight, the village carries a muted tension, a feeling that something waits just beyond sight, lingering at the edges of awareness. The most common reports involve the vanishing of travelers. Localsa, or what few remain, are warned that ghostly figures wander the village at night, luring the unsuspecting into the surrounding woods. Witnesses describe spectral travelers appearing on narrow streets, their faces pale, eyes glowing faintly, and movements deliberate but silent. They seem to beckon the passers-by, guiding them toward hidden paths that twist into the forest. Those who follow often vanish without a trace, their disappearances leaving nothing behind but an empty trail and the echo of footsteps fading into the darkness. Their disappearances leaving nothing behind but an empty trail and the echo of footsteps fading into the darkness. Some explorers claim to have felt an irresistible pull toward the shadows, a quiet insistence guiding them off the familiar streets and into the trees. Footsteps on empty streets are another frequently reported phenomenon. Travelers recount hearing slow, measured steps echoing from alleys or along cobblestone streets when no one is present. Sometimes the sounds approach, pause nearby, and retreat, as if observing before deciding whether to follow. Other times, the footsteps circle, appearing behind, beside, or even above the observer in the form of creaking attic boards or shaking shutters. The auditory presence is often accompanied by a cold draft or a sudden drop in temperature, reinforcing the impression that the village itself is alive with hidden activity. Ghostly candlelight adds to the village's haunting atmosphere. Windows often reveal faint glows, flickering as if someone is tending a hearth or moving within the house. Entering the buildings, visitors find empty rooms, ash-covered hearths, and dust-laden floors. Candles sometimes appear on tables or window sills for a brief moment, their flames dancing without warmth, then extinguishing when approached. Some witnesses claim the candlelight moves independently, drifting through rooms or along hallways, almost as if searching for something or guiding someone. Photographs and recordings occasionally capture these flickering lights, blurred and ethereal, floating above floors or hovering near walls. Defying explanation, the surrounding woods intensify the village's mysterious reputation. Trees grow thickly along the edges of Hawka S. Perch, branches arching over paths to create a canopy that blocks moonlight. Fog often settles in the valleys at night, reducing visibility and distorting sound. Within this haze, figures emerge and vanish, shadows lengthen unnaturally, and whispers drift among the branches. Visitors report hearing faint voices calling their names, soft murmurs repeating the last words spoken aloud, or indistinct warnings carried on the wind. The forest appears to have a will of its own, bending paths, concealing clearings, and guiding the curiosa or the unwary toward unseen destinations. Structures in the village seem affected by the supernatural as well. Doors swing open without wind, shutters rattle, and furniture occasionally shifts. Objects left behind by vanished travelers sometimes reappear in different locations, as though moved by invisible hands. Some explorers have glimpsed ghostly forms inside abandoned shops or inns, standing motionless, peering out windows, or drifting silently through walls. These apparitions rarely interact aggressively, yet their presence is undeniable, leaving witnesses with a lingering sense of being observed or even subtly guided. Despite its eerie reputation, Hawka S. Perch continues to draw those drawn to mystery, ghost hunters, and thrill seekers. Photographs often capture faint shadows along streets or the interior of empty homes. Audio recordings sometimes pick up whispers, footsteps, or faint creaking consistent with movement where no living person is present. Campers near the village report waking to the feeling of being watched, seeing ghostly lights flicker near tents, or hearing faint voices calling from the trees. Each visitor leaves with the same impression. Hawk's Perch is not truly abandoned, but a place where the past lingers, and the missing continue to haunt its streets and woods. Hawka S. Perch is more than a deserted mountain village. It is a threshold between the living and the vanished. The ghostly figures, footsteps, and candlelight serve as reminders that those who disappear are not forgotten, and that the Village's history of mystery and loss endures. Every shadowed street, every flickering window, and every path into surrounding forest carries the presence of the unseen, preserving the legend of the village of vanishing travelers, a place where the curious may glimpse the vanished, but never leave unchanged. Pine Bluff perches atop a gentle hill, once a quiet village centered around a grand stone church, whose bell rang across the surrounding countryside. Decades ago, the bell was the heartbeat of the village, calling villagers to morning prayers, marking festivals, and signaling events both joyous and tragic. Its sound was familiar and comforting, echoing over timbered homes, cobblestone streets, and fields of wildflowers. Families thrived here, tending gardens, raising livestock, and gathering for services and celebrations in the churchyard. But tragedy struck. A fire, a mysterious illness, or a slow abandonment, no one can say for certain, left the village deserted. Today, the church itself is. The sound of its bell continue to haunt the hill, echoing as though the village itself remembers what was lost. Visitors to Pine Bluff immediately sense an unnatural quiet. The streets are empty and overgrown, the houses weathered and leaning, windows shattered or clouded with dust. Yet the silence is fragile, punctuated by distant, disembodied sounds that appear to come from nowhere. The most common of these is the tolling of the bell. Sometimes the bell tolls once. Sometimes it peals repeatedly, carrying across the village and surrounding fields. Witnesses describe hearing the deep, resonant clang of metal striking metal, ringing at intervals that seem both random and deliberate. Sometimes the bell tolls once. Sometimes it peals repeatedly, carrying across the village and surrounding fields. Those who try to locate its source find only empty ruins. No bell swinging from a tower. No sound originating from a discernible point. The tolling can be sudden, startling visitors in the stillness, or gradual, swelling from faint echoes to a thunderous resonance before fading away. Shadowy figures are another frequent phenomenon in Pine Bluff. Explorers report seeing forms kneeling in the ruins of the church or along streets where houses have collapsed. The figures are dark and indistinct, sometimes tall and human-like, sometimes hunched and blurred edges. They move slowly, often with a rhythm of prayer or contemplation, and vanish when approached. Some witnesses claim to see small groups of these figures, silently repeating gestures of worship, bowing at empty altars, or moving through doorways that lead nowhere. These apparitions rarely interact directly, Yet their presence leaves a deep impression, a sense of village frozen in memory, inhabited by those who refuse to leave even after life itself departed. The air at Pine Bluff carries other subtle signs of lingering devotion. They seem to float from nowhere, drifting across ruined streets, through collapsed walls and over broken fences, almost guiding their steps or drawing their attention toward the church ruins. At times, the hymns are accompanied by faint footsteps, the creak of pews, or the whisper of robes brushing stone floors, yet no one is present. Pine Bluff-esque ruins are central to the Village's eerie reputation. Stone foundations crumble unevenly, walls lean at impossible angles, and fragments of stained glass glint in the sunlight, catching reflections that suggest movement within. Doors hang crookedly, swinging on rusty hinges without wind. Visitors often report objects at candlesticks, fragments of furniture, or religious icons shifted or relocated between visits, as if someone or something is arranging them. Shadow and light play across these ruins in unusual ways, creating the illusion of motion and presence, heightening the sense that the village remains alive in a spectral form. The surrounding landscape amplifies the haunting. Fog sometimes rolls across the hill, softening edges, bending light, and making shadows appear longer and darker. Paths that seem familiar can twist or disappear, creating a disorienting effect for travelers. Visitors report a sensation of being watched, the weight of unseen eyes following them as they move from ruin to ruin. Even in broad daylight, the village retains an air of suspense, as though the past is pressing against the present. Despite its reputation, Pine Bluff continues to attract explorers, ghost hunters, and those drawn to history and the paranormal. Photographs occasionally capture shadowy figures kneeling in empty streets or hints of light reflecting off invisible objects. Audio recordings sometimes pick up the tolling of the bell, fragments of hymns, or the soft rustle of footsteps on stone floors where no living being is present. Campers nearby report waking to cold drafts, subtle movements in tents, or the faint sound of a voice carrying through the ruins. Every visitor leaves with the same impression. The village may be abandoned in body, but it remains inhabited in spirit. Pine Bluff is more than a ruined village. It is a testament to devotion, memory, and loss. The tolling bell, shadowy worshippers, and drifting hymns are reminders that the lives once lived here have left an enduring mark. Every broken stone, every leaning wall, and every gust of cold wind carries the echoes of those who remain, guarding the rituals and spaces that define their lives. Pine Bluff endures as the village of the silent bells, a place where faith lingers beyond death, and where visitors may hear, see, and feel the weight of devotion still echoing across the hilltop. Hollow Ridge perches atop a lonely hill, once a small village centered around its schoolhouse, a place that echoed with the laughter and chatter of children. Decades ago, families lived along narrow streets, their homes simple but warm, built from timber and stone. The school was the heart of the village, a place of learning, play, and community gatherings. Its bell tower rang each morning, signaling the start of classes, and tolled in the evenings for school events and festivals. Children ran to the courtyards, their voices carrying across the fields and into nearby forests. Life in Hollow Ridge was modest, peaceful, and tightly knit, until one fateful night when the school burned down under mysterious circumstances. Flames consumed the wooden building swiftly, leaving only ashes and memories. And in the aftermath, families began to leave, one by one. The village gradually emptied, abandoned to wind, rain, and creeping vegetation, until only the ruins remained. Today, Hollow Ridge is quiet, yet it is far from empty. The streets are overgrown with weeds, fences collapse under the weight of years, and homes sag against the hillside. The skeletal remains of the schoolhouse still dominate the village center, its blackened walls standing as a silent reminder of tragedy. Those who visit often describe an immediate sense of unease, a feeling that the hill itself holds a memory of the children who once filled its spaces. Even in daylight, the ruins feel alive, Shadows move where there should be none. The faintest noise ceasa. Rustling leaves, distant footsteps, or creaking boardsa seem amplified, echoing unnaturally through empty streets. The school's bell is central to the haunting. Visitors often report hearing it ring at night. Its sound clear and deliberate despite the absence of a tower or bell. Its sound clear and deliberate despite the absence of a tower or bell. Sometimes it tolls once, a soft and mournful clang that drifts across the village. Other times, it tolls repeatedly, growing louder and more urgent, as if calling unseen children to class. Attempts to locate the source yield nothing. The sound seems to emanate from the ruins themselves, from the very air of Hollow Ridge. Those who hear the bell describe a cold shiver running down their spine, an instinctive awareness that the village is watching, remembering, and perhaps mourning. Shadowy children are frequently reported near the remains of the school. Witnesses describe small, indistinct figures appearing in windows, crouched on steps, or moving along abandoned hallways. They seem aware of visitors, but rarely approach directly. Sometimes they mimic the movements of real children, skipping along hallways, peeking from doorways, or pausing a window to stare silently before vanishing. Some visitors recount the unsettling sensation of being followed, of footsteps echoing behind them in time with their own. Yet when they turn, no one is there. These apparitions are often fleeting, visible for only moments, yet they leave an impression of energy, playfulness, and otherworldly longing that lingers long after the viewer departs. Chalkboards are another eerie aspect of Hollow Ridge. Explorers report finding strange, unexplained scribbles and drawings appearing on blackened board within the ruins. Letters and numbers emerge seemingly overnight, often written in childish handwriting. Some drawings depict houses, families, or groups of children, while others are cryptic symbols that defy interpretation. Attempt to erase or clean the boards prove futile. The markings either reappear or shift subtly when revisited. These phenomena add a layer of mystery, suggesting that the school retains connection to the children who once occupied it, preserving traces of their presence in ways that defy logic. The village itself amplifies the haunting. Familiar landmarks appear to shift. Fog often rolls over the hill. Trees lean over streets and homes. Their branches sway even in calm air, producing shadows that resemble human figures. The combination of wind, mist, and ruined structures creates an environment where perception is unreliable, heightening the feeling that Hollow Ridge is alive, observing every step and guiding visitors along paths both literal and spectral. Despite its desolate appearance, Hollow Ridge continues to draw curious travelers, historians, and paranormal enthusiasts. Photographs sometimes capture blurred forms in doorways or windows, faint shadows moving along streets, or faint chalk marks appearing on ruined boards. Campers nearby report waking to the sensation of unseen figures nearby, or faint laughter drifting through the night, or the sudden impression of being watched. Each visitor leaves with a sense that the village is not truly empty, that the echoes of childhood and tragedy remain intertwined in the ruins. Hollow Ridge is more than an abandoned school village. It is a place where memory, loss, and lingering spirits converge. The tolling bell, shadowy children, and mysterious chalkboard writings serve as reminders that the lives once lived here continue to leave their mark. Every cracked wall, every overgrown path, and every darkened window carries the presence of the past. Hollow Ridge endures as the vanished school village, a place where the laughter of children, once silenced by fire and time, still echoes through the hill, waiting to be seen, heard, and remembered. Crows nest perches atop a jagged ridge, a village long abandoned yet never forgotten, shrouded in superstition and shadow. Decades ago, it was a modest settlement of timbered homes and narrow streets, surrounded by dense forests that whisper with the wind. Families lived quietly, tending gardens, raising livestock, and walking the winding paths that connected the village to distant markets. The community thrived for a time, but unease always lingered, fueled by unexplained disappearances, sudden illnesses, and stories of black-feathered birds appearing in ominous flocks. Eventually, fear and tragedy emptied the village. Homes fell into decay, streets became overgrown, and the surrounding woods reclaimed what once belonged to humans. Today, Crow's Nest remains, a place where superstition and reality intertwine, and where the air itself seems charged with the memory of what was lost. Visitors to the village immediately sense a weight to the atmosphere, an oppressive stillness that feels alive. The streets are overrun with weeds, moss covers crumbling stonework, and trees bend and sway as if observing anyone who dares enter. Trees bend and sway as if observing anyone who dares enter. The most common phenomenon is the presence of black-feathered birds in numbers that defy explanation. Witnesses report seeing flocks gather in empty courtyards, perch along rooftops, and fill the forest canopy, their movements synchronized in ways that seem intentional rather than natural. Sometimes the birds appear suddenly, as if materializing from thin air, and vanish just as quickly into the mist. Sometimes the birds appear suddenly, as if materializing from thin air, and vanish just as quickly into the mist. Their presence is more than unsettling. It carries an air of judgment. Shadowy villagers are frequently reported among the trees. Observers describe forms that resemble humans, moving silently between trunks, pausing to watch intruders, or disappearing into the undergrowth at the edge of vision. These figures often appear in groups, sometimes mimicking gestures of life once la vida, walking, gathering, or gesturinga, but vanish when approached, leaving only the impression that the village is populated by phantoms. Some explorers report seeing figures at the edge of rooftops or along the broken streets, staring silently before dissolving into shadow. These apparitions are rarely aggressive, yet their presence is profoundly unsettling, suggesting that the lives once lived here continue in spectral form, entwined with the natural world that now dominates. Eerie chanting carried by the wind adds another layer to the village's haunting. Visitors frequently report hearing low, rhythmic sounds drifting through the trees and across empty streets. Sometimes the chanting resembles a human language, fragmented and unintelligible. Other times it feels alien, a repetition of sounds that stir deep unease. The voices seem to come from multiple directions at once, echoing through the forest canopy and fading just when one attempts to locate their source. The chanting is often accompanied by rustling leaves, snapping twigs, and the occasional flapping of wings, creating the impression that unseen observers are moving through the village, marking the boundaries of who may enter. Buildings and Crow's Nest bear the weight of time and neglect. Timbered walls sag, roofs collapse under moss and snow, and windows gape like empty eyes. Doors creak or swing open without wind, and floors groan under invisible weight. Some visitors report fleeting glimpses of shadowy figures moving through the interiors, pausing at doorways or behind broken windows, only to vanish when approached. Objects of old furniture, utensils, even small personal items sometimes shift mysteriously, as if handled by invisible hands. Photographs occasionally capture fleeting forms inside abandoned homes, or the flutter of black feathers where none should be, giving weight to stories that would otherwise be dismissed as superstition. The surrounding forest amplifies the village's eerie reputation, creating a canopy that blocks sunlight and muffles sound. Mist often settles in hollows, bending light and distorting perception. Paths shift subtly, landmarks appear to move, and shadows lengthen unnaturally, all creating the impression that the landscape itself conspires to confuse and guide intruders. Visitors report disorientation, sudden chills, and the sensation of being watched from multiple directions simultaneously. The birds, the figures, and the chants seem to interact with this environment, heightening the sense that Crow's Nest is not merely abandoned but alive in a supernatural sense. Despite its ominous reputation, Crow's Nest draws explorers, ghost hunters, and those drawn to mystery. Photographs sometimes reveal blurred figures along streets or shadowy forms in broken homes. Audio recordings occasionally pick up the sound of chanting, wing beats, or the shuffle of footsteps along moss-covered streets. Campers report waking to cold drafts, seeing flocks of black birds circling overhead, or hearing distant voices calling from the trees. Each experience leaves an impression of a place that has not truly died, a village suspended between memory, fear, and the presence of something beyond comprehension. Crow's Nest is more than a forgotten village. It is a testament to superstition, memory, and lingering spirits. The black-feathered birds, shadowy villagers, and chanting winds serve as reminders that the past is never truly gone, and that those who once lived here remain, watching from the trees and ruins. Every decayed house, every crooked street, and every rustling canopy carries the weight of lives intertwined with darkness, leaving Crow's Nest enduring as the village of black feathers, a place where curiosity may bring insider or warn intruders to leave. Foxglove sits quietly in a remote valley, a village once alive with families, laughter, and daily routines. Decades ago, the streets were lined with timber and stone homes, gardens full of vegetables and flowers, and the scent of cooking fires drifting across the air. Children ran freely along narrow lanes, while parents tended to work and chores, their voices mingling with the calls of birds and the wind through the trees. The village was small but tight-knit, bound together by daily life and shared history. Yet everything changed when mysterious disease swept through Foxglove. One by one, families fell ill. Panic and fear overtook the village, and those who survived fled to nearby towns, abandoning their homes and belongings in a hurry. Over time, nature reclaimed the streets, gardens became overgrown, and the village slipped into silence, leaving behind only ruins and the memories of lives that vanished too suddenly. Today, Foxglove is still, yet it is far from lifeless. The houses, though dilapidated, remain standing in ghostly alignment, their windows broken or clouded with dust, doors hanging crookedly on rusted hinges. Garden beds are choked with weeds. Fences have fallen, and the paths between homes are barely distinguishable under moss and grass. Yet visitors often report a sense that the village is not empty, that life lingers here in ways beyond explanation. Even in the daylight, there is an awareness of unseen eyes following, of spaces that feel occupied though no one walks them. The air carries a faint, almost imperceptible hum, as if the echoes of daily life have left an imprint on the surroundings. One of the most commonly reported phenomena in Foxglove is the presence of spirits of families who once lived here. Shadowy figures are glimpsed moving through windows, peering from doorways, or walking along the paths as though performing routines frozen in time. Visitors describe seeing parents tending invisible tasks in the ruins of kitchens or gardens, children playing in courtyards that are now empty, and even pets of shapes indistinct and ethereal following them along the cracked streets. These apparitions rarely approach directly, but their presence is unmistakable. Witnesses often feel watched, guided, or subtly accompanied, as if the village itself refuses to release the people who once gave it life. Chairs rocking on their own are another frequent occurrence. In abandoned homes, visitors report seeing furniture move gently, sometimes accompanied by soft creaks or thuds, as if invisible hands are setting objects back into motion. Rocking chairs move as though someone is seated, rocking rhythmically, only to stop abruptly when observed. Tables sometimes shift slightly, doors swing open or close without wind, and small objects of pots, utensils, toys appear move from one location to another. These movements create a sense that the village is inhabited not by chaos, but by routines, habits, and the quiet persistence of lives once lived. Lullabies sung by invisible children are perhaps the most haunting aspect of Foxglove. In the evenings, visitors report hearing soft, melodic voices carrying through the air, delicate and sorrowful. Sometimes the songs come from windows of abandoned homes, other times from the garden paths or the overgrown courtyards. The lullabies are often faint at first, barely audible over the wind and rustling leaves, then grow more distinct, echoing across the ruins. They carry a tone of comfort yet melancholy, as if the children are remembering their lost families or trying to reach anyone who might listen. The music seems tied to the presence of shadowy figures, reinforcing the idea that the village is alive with memories that have not faded. The environment of Foxglove amplifies the haunting. Trees encroach upon streets and homes. Branches swaying to produce shadows that seem human in the evening light. Fog sometimes rolls into the valley, softening edges and bending sound so that footsteps, whispers, or songs carry unpredictably. Visitors report a sense of disorientation. Streets that seem familiar twist, gardens expand or shrink, and homes appear larger or smaller than expected. Even compasses and electronic devices occasionally fail or act strangely, as if the village itself resists accurate mapping or observation. Despite its eerie reputation, Foxglove continues to draw explorers, paranormal enthusiasts, and those fascinated by the mysteries of abandoned villages. Photographs sometimes capture fleeting shadows at windows, blurred forms in courtyards, or objects moving inexplicably. Audio recordings occasionally capture faint voices, singing lullabies, soft footsteps, or the creak of rocking chairs. Campers report waking to cold drafts in empty rooms, sensing the presence of a figure near their tents, or hearing whispered calls from the ruins. Each visitor leaves with the same impression. Foxglove is not empty, but a place where memory, tragedy, and the persistence of life converge in spectral form. Foxglove is more than a deserted village. It is a testament to lives interrupted and memories that refuse to fade. The shadowy families, moving furniture, and every creaking floorboard carries the weight of absence and remembrance. Every overgrown path, every broken window, and every creaking floorboard carries the weight of absence and remembrance. Silver Pine rests quietly at the edge of a dense forest, a village abandoned decades ago, yet lingering in memory, rumor, and an unsettling presence that seems to follow anyone who dares approach. Once, it was a small but thriving settlement, built along narrow roads lined with timber homes and stone foundations. Families lived in close quarters, tending gardens, raising livestock, and walking the winding paths that led into the surrounding woods. Life here was ordinary yet intimate. The sound of children playing, livestock moving, and voices echoing across the streets gave the village its rhythm, the unsettling presence that seems to follow anyone who dares approach. That rhythm ended abruptly, though no one is entirely sure why. Some speak of a disease, others of unexplained disappearances, while a few whisper of darker forces at play. Whatever the cause, the village emptied, leaving its streets, homes, and surrounding forests to be slowly reclaimed by nature. Today, Silver Pine is overgrown, its homes sagging, windows shattered, and doors hanging crooked on rusty hinges. Yet the abandonment is deceptive. Visitors frequently report a sense of being watched, of an energy that seems alive, tied to the Village's past. The forest surrounding Silver Pine amplifies this feeling. Trees grow thickly, their branches intertwining overhead, creating natural corridors that block sunlight and distort sound. Even in daylight, shadows seem longer and darker than they should be, and the wind carries more than the rustle of leaves. Whispers drift along the paths, faint but distinct. The air grows chillier in places without cause. The whispers are Silver Pine's most notorious feature. Visitors describe hearing their own names carried in the wind, sometimes repeated softly, sometimes in urgent tones, as if Summonia or Something is calling from just beyond sight. Others report hearing the names of people long gone, friends or family members they never knew lived here. The effect is disorienting and intimate, as if the village itself knows those who enter it. The whispers are not constant, but when they occur, they seem to come from multiple directions at once, through broken windows, across open courtyards, or from the forested paths beyond the streets. Those who attempt to trace the source rarely succeed, as the sound shifts with movement, drifting away or vanishing entirely. Shadowy figures are frequently reported on the abandoned roads and pathways. Witnesses describe dark, indistinct forms crossing the streets, moving between ruined homes, or appearing at the edge of the forest. These figures are rarely detailed, appearing blurred at the edges, but their movements are deliberate. Some seem to mimic ordinary tasks, walking, standing, gesturing, or appearing from doorways. Others move as if watching, following silently, and vanish when approached. The figures appear both human and otherworldly, and those who encounter them describe a palpable sensation of being observed, as if the village itself is aware of their presence and responding in kind. Cold chills accompany both the whispers and the shadows. Visitors report sudden drops in temperature, often localized, sometimes following them along streets, pathways, or even into surrounding forest. In some cases, people feel a presence behind them, a whisper brushing their ear, yet when they turn, nothing is there. The combination of cold, whispering, and shadow creates an immersive sense of unease, as if the village itself is alive with memory and intent. The ruins of Silver Pine add to the haunting. Timbered homes lean precariously, roofs collapse, and walls are cracked with time. Windows reveal nothing but shadows and broken glass, yet visitors swear they have glimpsed forms moving inside. Doors creak open of their own accord, floors groan as if walked upon, and small objects of pots, tools, toys sometimes shift inexplicably. Photographs often capture fleeting shadows in windows or along streets, and audio recordings occasionally pick up faint whispers or indistinct footsteps in otherwise silent locations. Even compasses and electronic devices act strangely here, as if the village interferes with the very perception of reality. Despite its eerie reputation, Silver Pine draws explorers, paranormal investigators, and those intrigued by stories of the supernatural. Campers report waking to the sensation of being followed, hearing whispers in the early hours of the morning, or seeing shadowy figures pass silently near tents. Photographs and recordings confirm fleeting glimpses of movement, but rarely provide clarity, adding to the sense of mystery. The village endures as a presence, woven into the landscape, the forest, and the air itself, a place where past lives persist in whispers, shadows, and chills. Silver Pine is more than a forgotten village. It is a testament to memory, loss, and lingering spirits. The whispers, shadowy figures, and sudden chills serve as reminders that the lives once lived here have left an imprint, refusing to fade entirely. Every broken window, leaning wall, and forested path carries traces of its former inhabitants. Silver Pine endures as the village that whispers, a place where the past is never silent, and where visitors may hear, see, and feel the echoes of those who remain unseen but ever present. Redwood Hollow lies deep in a valley surrounded by towering redwoods, a village once alive with families, merchants, and the rhythm of everyday life. Decades ago, smoke from chimneys mingled with the scent of forest. Fires kept homes warm, and villagers moved along winding dirt roads connecting timbered houses. The village prospered quietly, a small community shaped by the forest, its misty mornings, and a creaking of old wooden bridges over streams. But Redwood Hollow was no stranger to fire. Over the years, a series of mysterious blazes swept through the settlement, destroying homes, barns, and the forest surrounding it. The fires were sudden and intense, leaving charred remnants in their wake, and eventually, the survivors abandoned the village, fleeing to safer ground. Today, Redwood Hollow stands silent, shrouded in mist that seemed forever tinged with smoke, a place where memory and tragedy cling stubbornly to the land. Visitors entering the village immediately sense a presence in the air. The streets, now overgrown with moss and weeds, wind between decaying houses and fallen fences. Even on calm days, the mist clings thickly to ground, curling around ruins and moving slowly along empty streets, giving the village an otherworldly, almost fluid quality. Shadows seem to bend and shift in the fog, and the forest floor is littered with the remains of burnt leaves, charred wood, and fallen branches, all crunching underfoot as if recording the steps of visitors. Ghostly figures are a hallmark of Redwood Hollow. Witnesses describe forms emerging from smoke and mist, often appearing as silhouettes of villagers who once lived here. Some are blurred and indistinct, moving slowly along streets or through the forest, while others are more defined, carrying out familiar routines, tending gardens, walking with children, or carrying buckets from wells that no longer exist. These apparitions rarely approach directly, yet their presence is palpable, a reminder that the lives once lived here linger in the air and in the charred remains of the village. Some visitors report seeing figures pause mid-step, glance in their direction, and then vanish entirely into the smoke, leaving behind an echo of movement and the faint smell of burned wood. The smoke itself seems alive. Even on days when no fire burns, thin wisps twist and curl around houses and along the streets, forming shapes that resemble people, animals, or objects. Visitors often describe feeling watched as the smoke moves, forming indistinct faces or figures that vanish when examined closely. Sometimes, the mist thickens suddenly, obscuring paths. And when it clears, a new shape has appeared, a shadowy tree, a figure crouched among ruins, or footprints leading into nowhere. The interplay of smoke, mist, and shadow creates a landscape that is both mesmerizing and unnerving, a place where the boundary between the natural and supernatural is fluid. Shadowed trees are another eerie aspect of the village. The redwoods bend and sway in ways that seem impossible without wind. Branches twist toward paths and houses, forming archways or shapes resembling human gestures. Some visitors report feeling the trees leaning closer, as if observing or warning them, and others hear the creak of wood bending and snapping despite still air. The trees themselves seem to carry memory, reacting to the presence of outsiders and echoing the tragedies of past fires through their movement and shadow. Phantom footsteps echo through Redwood Hollow, most often along streets covered in dead leaves or across collapsed floors of old buildings. Visitors describe hearing steps that do not match their own, sometimes walking behind them, sometimes ahead, and disappearing when they attempt to confront them. The footsteps vary in intensity, as some are soft, almost hesitant, while others are heavy and deliberate, as if someone is pacing the village, retracing familiar routes from a lifelong past. In combination with the smoke, shadows, and bending trees, these sounds heighten the feeling that the village itself is alive with memory, unwilling to release the past. Despite its haunting, Redwood Hollow draws explorers, historians, and paranormal enthusiasts. Photographs sometimes capture blurred figures emerging from mist or smoke, or ghostly silhouettes among burnt trees, or shapes that seem to bend unnaturally in the fog. Audio recordings often pick up soft footsteps, faint voices, or creaking wood where no living presence exists. Campers report waking to cold drafts, or seeing figures move between ruined homes, or watching smoke swirl into shapes that resemble humans before dissolving. Every visitor leaves with the same impression. Redwood Hollow is not simply abandoned. It is a place where memory, tragedy, and lingering spirits converge. Redwood Hollow is more than a burned village. It is a testament to the persistence of memory and the presence of the past. Ghostly figures, bending trees, curling smoke, and phantom footsteps serve as reminders that life here did not vanish entirely. Every charred plank, every twisted branch, and every swirl of mist carries the echo of the village-esque form of vitality and the tragedies that ended it. Redwood Hollow endures as a village of burning mist, a place where the flames of history still flicker in smoke and shadow, and where the spirits of the past remain visible to anyone daring enough to witness them. Twilight Grove sits in a secluded valley, where the sun seems about low on the horizon, and dusk lingers long after it should have faded. The village was once a modest settlement of timber and stone, its streets lined with small homes, gardens, and cobblestone paths. Families thrived here, raising children, tending animals, and working the land. But something about Twilight Grove always set it apart. The sun seemed to vanish earlier than expected, and the shadows clung stubbornly to the streets and forested edges. Over the years, residents noticed strange occurrences of ghostly figures glimpsed in the dim light. Children disappearing for hours only to return with no memory of where they had been. Slowly, families left, unable to explain the unease that settled over the village. Those who remained eventually vanished as well, leaving Twilight Grove abandoned, a place where evening never ends. And the air itself seems heavy with memory. Visitors immediately sense the unnatural twilight. Even at midday, the light is dim, filtered through dense tree canopies and lingering clouds that never fully clear. Shadows stretch unnaturally across streets and courtyards, and the forest surrounding the village feels alive, as though it observes each step. The eye struggles to distinguish distance, depth, or color, The village seems frozen between day and night, an endless transition where the usual markers of time no longer hold. Those who enter Twilight Grove report a sensation of stillness pressing in, a quiet anticipation that something unseen. From the dim edges, figures lingering in the twilight are the most common phenomenon. Visitors describe shadowy forms moving slowly along streets or standing the distance, just beyond the clarity of vision. Some appear human, dressed in old-fashioned clothing, pause mid-step as if caught between moments. Others seem less defined, almost merging with the shadows themselves. Witnesses often feel observed but are unable to locate the source. And when they attempt to approach, the figures vanish, leaving only a lingering impression of presence. In some cases, the shadows seem to mimic familiar gesturisa, turning a head, raising a hand, or stepping aside as if aware of intruders yet unwilling to reveal themselves fully. Ghostly children are another hallmark of Twilight Grove. In abandoned courtyards and along empty streets, visitors report faint giggles, the patter of small feet, or glimpses of figures darting through the shadows. These children seem engaged in play, chasing one another or skipping invisible ropes, yet they vanish when approached. Some witnesses hear the faint echo of toys clattering or see handprints appearing on dusty window panes before fading as mysteriously as they appear. The presence of these spectral children carries a bittersweet quality, suggesting the joy that once existed in the village, but preserved only as echoes of memory, suspended in the dim light. Unexplained lantern lights drift through the forest surrounding Twilight Grove. Observers describe glowing orbs moving along paths, floating above the underbrush or flickering between trees. The lights vary in color, sometimes a warm yellow, sometimes a cold bluish hue, and they move as though guided by unseen hands. They do not always remain in one place. Some follow visitors along forest trails, then vanish, while others seem to congregate in abandoned clearings, hovering silently as if observing or waiting. In combination with the twilight, these floating lanterns create a surreal, almost dreamlike landscape where perception is altered and the forest appears alive with presence. The village itself amplifies the haunting. Homes lean precariously, their roofs sag with age, windows broken or clouded, and doors hanging loosely on their hinges. Streets are cracked and uneven, lined with weeds and moss. Objects left behind the furniture, kitchenware, toys sometimes appear in new locations, shifted subtly as if handled by invisible hands. Footsteps echo across empty courtyards. Soft whispers drift through open windows, and doors creak or slam without wind. Photographs occasionally capture fleeting shapes in the twilight, blurred figures on streets or lantern lights hovering in doorways. Audio recordings sometimes pick up distant laughter, the soft clatter of toys, or the subtle murmur of voices carried across empty streets. The surrounding forest reinforces the village's eerie reputation. Trees form natural archways over paths, their branches bending as if to guide or obstruct. Fog often rolls in during twilight, softening edges, obscuring distance, and making shadows appear deeper than they are. Visitors report disorientation, with paths seeming to twist or vanish entirely, and familiar landmarks appearing in unexpected locations. Even sunlight struggles to penetrate the canopy, deepening the sense of perpetual dusk and making the village seem timeless, suspended between the past and the present. Despite its haunting, Twilight Grove draws explorers, ghost hunters, and those fascinated by abandoned villages. Witnesses leave with a sense that the village is not empty but alive with memory, caught in an eternal evening where the past persists. Shadowy figures, ghostly children, and drifting lanterns remind visitors that life here did not vanish completely, but lingers, suspended in light and shadow, waiting to be observed. Twilight Grove is more than a forgotten village. It is a place where time itself seems to halt, preserving the echoes of those who once lived here. Every dim street, every abandoned home, and every flickering lantern carries traces of the past, leaving the impression of a village caught forever in the last moments of day. It endures as eternal dusk village, a place where twilight never ends, and where the unseen still walks in the half-light, forever lingering at the edge of perception. Grave pine sits at the edge of a dark forest, a village abandoned long ago yet never forgotten. Decades ago, it was a small, tight-knit community, its streets lined with timber homes, stone walls, and cobblestone paths. Families lived simple lives, tending gardens, raising livestock, and gathering at the village square. At the heart of the settlement stood a small cemetery, a place of quiet reflection where generations were laid to rest under moss-covered stones. But tragedy struck the village repeatedly. Illness, accidents, and unexplained deaths claimed many lives in quick succession, leaving families bereft and fearful. One by one, the villagers fled, abandoning their homes, possessions, and the streets they had known so intimately. Over time, nature reclaimed the village. Weeds overran gardens, trees grew through cracks in stone walls, and the forest slowly swallowed the roads. Today, grave pine stands silent, yet it is far from lifeless, haunted by the sorrow of lives lost, and the echoes of mourning that never ended. Visitors entering grave pine are immediately struck by a heavy atmosphere. The air is thick and still, carrying the faint scent of damp earth and decaying wood. Even in daylight, the village seems dim, as if shadow clings to every corner. Streets are cracked and overgrown, homes lean and sag, and the cemetery, though weathered and overrun, dominates the village with gravestones jutting from the earth at odd angles. The silence is oppressive, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves or a distant bird call. Yet visitors quickly realize that other sounds seem to exist as subtle, almost imperceptible, yet impossible to ignore. Crying and whispers are among the most common experiences reported in grave pine. Visitors describe hearing soft, sorrowful sobs drifting across the streets or through the trees, often from no discernible source. Whispers follow closely, murmuring words that are unintelligible or fragments of pleas for help. The sounds can appear suddenly, surrounding visitors in a circle of grief, or emerge faintly from the distance, drawing the listener toward the cemetery or abandoned homes. Sometimes the crying seems to respond to movement, growing louder when someone approaches the gravestones or pauses on a path, and fading when attention shifts elsewhere. The effect is haunting, as if the village itself is grieving, mourning the lives lost long ago and the families that vanished. In despair, shadowy figures are another hallmark of grave pine. Witnesses report indistinct forms moving through the trees, stepping lightly across streets, or standing silently near homes and gravestones. These figures are rarely detailed, appearing blurred at the edges, yet their presence is undeniable. Some appear as adults, bent slightly with sorrow, while others resemble children, pausing mid-step or leaning against a gravestone. Some appear as adults, bent slightly with sorrow, while others resemble children, pausing mid-step or leaning against a gravestone. They vanish when approached, leaving only a sense of eyes watching, of presence lingering. In combination with whispers and cries, these apparitions create the impression of a village caught in perpetual mourning, where the dead and the living, though few remain, are never truly separated. Footsteps are often heard on streets and through cemeteries, sometimes following visitors or echoing in empty homes. The sounds vary in weight and pace, from soft, hesitant steps to deliberate, heavy treads. They seem to move independently of natural causes, appearing along paths that are otherwise empty. Some visitors report feeling accompanied as they walk, a pressure on their back or shoulders, though turning reveals no one there. These footsteps often coincide with crying or whispers, enhancing the sensation of sorrow pressing on all who linger too long in the village. The cemetery itself amplifies the haunting. Gravestones tilt and lean, etched names obscured by moss and lichen, yet each marker seems to carry memory. Visitors describe a sensation of being drawn along rows of graves, as if invisible hands guide their path. Cold drafts move unpredictably through the grounds, brushing against faces and clothing, and shadows stretch unnaturally across the soil. Some report seeing figures kneeling by graves or glimpsing forms moving among the stones, disappearing when observed directly. Even trees around the cemetery appear alive, branches swaying without wind, casting shadows that twist and bend in ways that mimic human motion. Despite its oppressive atmosphere, Grave Pine draws explorers, historians, and those fascinated by abandoned villages. Photographs occasionally capture blurred figures among the gravestones or in doorways, and audio recordings pick up faint crying, whispers, or footsteps where none should exist. Campers report waking to cold drafts, feeling watched, or hearing voices call out in the night. Every visitor leaves with a deep impression that the village is not truly empty, but inhabited by the sorrow of the past, a lingering grief that permeates the very soil and air. Grave Pine is more than a deserted village. It is a place where tragedy, memory, and lingering spirits converge. The cries, whispers, shadowy figures, and phantom footsteps are reminders that the lives once lived here left an indelible mark. Every broken window, leaning wall, and moss-covered gravestone carries the weight of absence and mourning. Grave Pine endures as a village of mourning, a place where grief lingers, guiding visitors along silent streets and through overgrown cemeteries. A solemn testament to lives lost and the sorrow that never fully fades. North Carolina's haunted villages remind us that forests are more than trisa. They are guardians of memory, of loss, and of spirits that refuse to rest. Across these abandoned streets, overgrown schools, and silent homes, the whispers of the past still linger, waiting for the unwary to stumble upon them. If you ever venture into these forests, respect the land, heed the warnings of local